Chapter 2093. Han Fei realized that something was wrong. Xia Xiaochan was a king and it was impossible for her bloodline to dry up without warning. Even he had gone to investigate more than once, but to no avail. Han Fei believed that his eyesight was not bad now. It was impossible that he couldn't detect anything unusual in Xia Xiaochan's body. If he couldn't, he might not be able to detect it even if he was in the heaven-opening realm. In the courtyard, the heaven-opening divine technique descended, and Han Fei consumed another 500 years of vitality to replenish Xia Xiaochan's strange bloodline. Her strength was sealed, but it didn't mean that her Tao was sealed, so the effect of the heaven-opening divine technique wouldn't be reduced at all. However, Han Fei was actually very shocked. This time, it was much more serious than in the morning. With his real realm, he could recover 70% to 80% in an instant even if he was in the heaven-opening realm. However, it could only help Xia Xiaochan for a while. In the past 3 years, Han Fei had consumed as much as 5,000 years of vitality to cast the heaven-opening divine technique. However, today's consumption was especially high. The only person Han Fei could think of who could solve this problem was Xia Hongzhu and eldest senior brother. In the past 200 years, Han Fei had attended every small gathering in the Void Temple. The last big gathering was after Jiuyin Ling preached to him. After listening to eldest senior brother's preaching, Han Fei, who had already seen the path, completely understood the Taoist heart. However, this time, there was still half a year before the centennial gathering. However, Han Fei couldn't wait. Compared with Xia Hongzhu, Han Fei trusted eldest senior brother more. After all, eldest senior brother was at least an emperor. At this time, Xia Xiaochan leaned against the bed and said, "I've looked inside myself countless times and found no problem. I can even break out in my strongest state at any time. However, the inexplicable disappearance of this bloodline is really hard to explain. Maybe it's because my divine bloodline came too easily." Han Fei comforted her. "It may also be because your strength has improved too fast in the past 100 years. As for why the bloodline disappeared, I have to find someone to ask." Xia Xiaochan's little face couldn't help but droop. "Are you going to the mermaid royal family?" Han Fei shook his head. "No." Xia Xiaochan said in surprise, "Then are you looking for Uncle Xian or the Snail King?" Han Fei shook his head. "No." Xia Xiaochan's eyelids twitched. "If you don't look for him, who are you looking for? Martial Emperor City?" Han Fei shook his head. "Stop guessing. The Medicine King Heaven specializes in refining medicine. Can't we find one?" Xia Xiaochan couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. If it was just the Medicine King Heaven, no one could shake Han Fei. Han Fei sighed inwardly. He did want to tell Xia Xiaochan about the Void Temple. However, he felt that it was inappropriate to let Xia Xiaochan know too much now. The Void Temple was definitely involved in a lot of secrets, and it was the enemy of the Immortal Temple and the Time Temple. If Xia Xiaochan knew that he had entered the Void Temple, he didn't know what would happen in the future. Therefore, Han Fei just comforted Xia Xiaochan and made an excuse that he was going to the Medicine King Heaven and would return in 2 days. After a while, in a sea area, Han Fei activated the mark of the Void Temple in the depths of his soul. When Han Fei felt the mark in his mind flicker softly, Han Fei couldn't wait to say, "Senior brother, I have something to ask of you. Can I start the centennial party in advance?" After about 10 minutes, a figure finally appeared in Han Fei's mind. "Yes." When senior brother confirmed that he could start the centennial party, in the void, the shadow of a huge bronze gate fell, and the bronze gate was suddenly covered by a white mist. In the eyes of other creatures, this place was suddenly covered by a layer of white mist, and they couldn't see the bronze gate at all. Han Fei couldn't wait to step to the bronze gate, pressed his human king token on the bronze gate, and the gate slowly opened. Han Fei took a slight breath and stepped in. It still looked the same as before. It seemed that the Void Temple's gathering place was this mountain peak that no one knew where. When Han Fei arrived, several figures appeared one after another. He saw that eldest senior brother was already sitting there, and then an azure dragon was swimming in the sky. Han Fei immediately bowed. "Greetings, eldest senior brother azure dragon." Azure Dragon said, "Junior brother, I heard that you have something urgent to do? Let's talk about it when everyone is here." Then, the big skeleton and second senior sister Kagura appeared. When senior brother Heavenly Thunder, who was ranked 10th, appeared, senior brother said, "Junior brother Six Gods is dealing with the Undying Temple. 11 is competing for opportunities. There are only 10 people in today's party." Because they all came in advance because of Han Fei's request, the first thing they did was to look at Han Fei. Second senior sister Kagura said, "Junior brother, I heard from senior brother that you are in trouble. Tell me about it." Senior sister Qinglian said, "It's an emergency." "Junior brother, what trouble are you in?" Han Fei had just met them one by one, so he naturally had to solve his own problem first. Han Fei said, "Senior brothers and senior sisters, my problem may be complicated. My wife is the child of the god's son. Finally, after the tribulation, she returned the god's blood. I helped her recover her bloodline with divine spells. But now, the god's blood in my wife's body is disappearing for no reason. Even if I observe her all the time, I can't find any problem. I have performed divine spells many times, but I can only maintain the regeneration of her god's blood, but I can't stop it from disappearing. Recently, the god's blood in her body has disappeared too fast, so I have to come to ask you for help." After hearing Han Fei's explanation, before anyone could propose a solution, senior brother Tian Henji said with a smile, "I didn't expect that junior brother already has a wife at such a young age." Senior sister Red Lotus giggled. "Ha! How happy you are. We are all envious of you." Senior sister Dark Shadow asked, "Do you all know the reason? Why don't I know it?" The skeleton senior brother said, "I don't know either." At this moment, senior brother Azure Dragon said, "It's normal that you two don't know." Han Fei was dumbfounded. "What's going on? Why are you still talking and laughing? Isn't this a bit too much?" However, Shiji Kagura said, "All right, stop joking around. Look at how anxious junior brother is. Junior brother, this is indeed a big deal, but it's also a good thing." "That's a good thing?" Han Fei was dumbfounded. "I'm so distressed. How can it be a good thing?" World Kagura smiled softly. "You said that your wife has a god's bloodline. The birth of a bloodline will not disappear for no reason. Since she has inherited it, she has a god's bloodline. As for why the god's blood disappeared for no reason, it's because she is pregnant." "What?" At this time, Han Fei felt that his head was about to explode. This was not the kind of explosion that was like a bolt from the blue, but the kind that was congested with blood. It was excitement, shock, and disbelief. Han Fei couldn't help but feel his palms began to smoke, and he murmured, "So that's it. So it's a good thing? I have a son?" World Kagura added, "Don't be excited, junior brother. It's extremely difficult for strong masters to give birth to offspring. And your wife has a god's bloodline, which is even more difficult. You still have to continue to use your divine skill. Your situation is very strange. You haven't reached the required strength, but you have given birth to a god's child, so the consumption is naturally great. Therefore, before your child takes shape, he needs to absorb a lot of God's bloodline. So, you have to continue to use your divine skill and help her produce God's blood at any time." Red Lotus followed, "Don't worry, it won't be long before this phenomenon will disappear when his divine foundation is enough." But then Han Fei said, "But when her mother gave birth to her, there wasn't much God's blood. There was only one drop." Senior sister Red Lotus said, "So, your wife's talent must have been greatly limited at the beginning. Her birth must have been quite difficult. She didn't die prematurely, so she must have been protected by someone. It wasn't until you recast her bloodline that her overall foundation was improved again. However, in many realms before she became a king, she must have not been very complete. However, if she wants to make up for it now, she either has to be reborn, or cultivate an incarnation and then merge with it. If she recultivates like this, her basic strength will definitely increase by several folds." Phew, Han Fei understood, let out a long breath, and completely relaxed. In his heart, he was ecstatic. Pregnant? He didn't expect his first child to be so good at tormenting people. At this moment, he heard senior sister Lotus say, Little junior brother, senior sister will give you a chaos green lotus. When you return, you can insert it into your wife's dantian. The vitality of the green lotus should be able to help you consume less of it. Han Fei was overjoyed. Thank you, senior sister lotus. Then in the void, a lotus flower broke through the layers of void and finally fell into Han Fei's palm. A string of information emerged in Han Fei's eyes. Name Chaos Green Lotus. Introduction. A chaotic spiritual treasure born in the depths of the chaotic sea. It contains boundless vitality. If one eats it at the heaven-splitting realm, they can live another life. Grade. Chaos Spiritual Artifact. Quality. Normal. Chaos energy contained. 245,536 points. Effect. When an ordinary person is about to die, he can use this lotus to live another life. The heaven-opening realm could extend one's lifespan by 300,000 years. Venerable sovereigns could prolong their lives by 10,000 years. Can be used in medicine to form a pill. Chapter 2094. When Han Fei saw the information of the Chaos Green Lotus, he gasped in shock. Natural spiritual treasure? Live another life? Is this chaotic green lotus so advanced? Looking at the chaotic energy contained in it, Han Fei was speechless. I've traveled the chaotic ocean sea, fought life-and-death battles, slaughtered several venerable emperors, and absorbed dozens of king source seas to get so much chaotic energy. However, senior sister Green Lotus casually threw such a precious treasure. How was it different from a divine artifact? Han Fei couldn't help but look solemn. Such a friendship deserved to be treated with caution. If there was a chance in the future, he would have to return it. Even if Green Lotus felt that it was just a trivial thing to do. After solving Han Fei's problem, eldest senior brother said, little junior brother's problem has been solved. Anything else can be discussed here. Azure Dragon said, the Black Dragon Emperor of the Dragon Clan is very radical. He may lead part of the Dragon Clan to reappear in the Sea Realm. So please be careful when you meet him. Senior brother Heavenly Thunder said, it said that the God Clan found a starting land in the depths of the Chaos Sea and obtained a rare treasure to forge a divine weapon. It's at least an ultra-quality Chaos spiritual treasure, maybe even higher. If there are no accidents, the God Clan will have a peerless heavenly talent. Dark Shadow World said, in the Star Sea, traces of a star behemoth were found. After solving Han Fei's problem, Han Fei was like a noob, clicking his tongue. This topic was too fucking high-end. He couldn't get a word in at all. The Black Dragon Emperor reappeared? An ultra-quality chaos spiritual treasure? Even this chaotic green lotus was just an ordinary chaos spiritual treasure. Top quality? What kind of thing was that? Also, Star Sea, Star Behemoth? What the hell is this? After a while, after the communication in front of all the senior brothers and senior sisters, eldest senior brother said, sit down, the lecture begins. Han Fei was immediately refreshed. If there were no special circumstances, the greatest benefit he could get from attending such a big gathering was eldest senior brother's lecture. Every time after eldest senior brother's lecture, Han Fei felt that he would gain a lot. However, at this moment, he was so excited that how could he calm down? However, when Han Fei heard the complicated preaching, he could not help but fall into an ethereal state. Every sermon was like an epiphany. Han Fei sensed that joy was growing from the depths of his heart. At that moment, or maybe during the long sermon, Han Fei seemed to have a kind of epiphany, an opportunity to open the sky, which seemed to be on the verge of emerging. It was as if he was in a dream and was about to eat a cake when he suddenly woke up from the dream. When Han Fei came back to his senses, he found that the lecture time had passed, but he only felt that a moment had passed. Of course, Han Fei didn't feel it was a pity. At least, Xia Xiaochan's problem had been solved, and he was going to have a son. Oh no, it could also be his daughter. But who cares? It's all the same. I haven't been a father yet. After bidding farewell to his senior brothers and sisters, the 100-year reunion came to an end. Han Fei quietly appeared in the sea outside. The shadow of the bronze gate dissipated, and the white mist gradually melted. Han Fei held a green lotus and quietly left. The next day, Han Fei wandered around the outer sea and reappeared in the small courtyard, leaving a projection. The projection merged with her body, and Xia Xiaochan was lying on the recliner in front of the door. Seeing Han Fei return, she suddenly got up and said, "You're back. Why are you holding a green lotus in your hand? Hey, sit there. Do you have any manners? Is there anyone who gets up like that? What's the difference between this and jumping?" "Xia Xiaochan," Han Fei said, "I went to the Medicine King Heaven and stood in front of old Lady Qiu, scaring her to death. She had to give me a place with a spiritual treasure in the chaotic ocean. Look, don't underestimate this green lotus. This is a natural spiritual treasure. There is only one of it in the chaotic ocean, and it contains tremendous vitality and chaotic energy. Sit there, and I'll hit your dantian." Xia Xiaochan was dumbfounded. He had only gone out for 2 days, and he found a natural spiritual treasure? What level was a heaven and earth spiritual treasure? It could only be found by chance. Although there were natural spiritual treasures in the chaotic ocean, he found one in only 2 days? Han Fei didn't dare to say that it was not just a natural spiritual treasure, but a chaotic spiritual treasure, which was much more effective than ordinary natural spiritual treasures. However, Xia Xiaochan wondered, even if it is a natural spiritual treasure, why did you put it into my dantian? Han Fei said with a straight face, "Your body is weak, and this thing is full of vitality. If I put it into your dantian, it won't affect your fetus. Your son can absorb the vitality and the blood of creatures." Xia Xiaochan was still confused. What fetus? How can I have a son? However, after a brief daze, Xia Xiaochan couldn't help but be shocked. "What did you say?" "You said I..." Xia Xiaochan couldn't help but look down at her belly and exclaim, "That's impossible. I can't feel it at all. If I was pregnant, why didn't I show any signs?" Han Fei pressed Xia Xiaochan's shoulders with both hands and pressed her to sit on the recliner. "Old Lady Qiu said that it's because our bloodline is too strong. Your son needs to absorb enough God spirit blood pulse from you to build his foundation. He also said that you were malnourished when your mother gave birth to you. If it weren't for Chen Huangyan's protection, you might have died. Well, from this perspective, I can spare Chen Huangyan's life. He's still useful." Xia Xiaochan was still full of shock, as if she hadn't recovered from the shocking news. Han Fei added, "By the way, he also said, before you became a king, you didn't have enough God spirit blood. That's why you didn't reach a perfect realm before. If you recultivate, your foundation and strength will be many times stronger than it is now. At that time, you will truly be the son of a god, the #1 expert in this world." Oh. Seeing Xia Xiaochan's casual response, Han Fei knew that she heard it, so he repeated it. The second time, Xia Xiaochan said, "That's not urgent. I can cultivate a reincarnation. In the future, I can still fuse with it and make up for what I lost before." Han Fei nodded. "That's not urgent. We have plenty of time. Don't move now. I'll put this lotus into your abdomen." A year passed. Thinking that Xia Xiaochan wasn't feeling well, Han Fei gradually stopped participating in the affairs of the Bright Moon Village and even went to the sea. When a healing divine light arrived, Han Fei performed the heaven-opening divine technique again to continue producing God's spirit blood. With the help of the chaotic green lotus, Han Fei rarely performed the heaven-opening divine technique in the past year. However, after only 1 year, the powerful chaotic green lotus was slowly absorbed this morning. At this moment, after Han Fei performed the heaven-opening divine technique again, he suddenly heard Xia Xiaochan exclaim in shock, "It's here. There's a small dot." "Where is it?" Han Fei immediately rushed to Xia Xiaochan and pressed his hand on her belly. Then, in his perception, he saw a sesame-sized grain that seemed to be enshrouded in a faint green and gold light. After a year of hard work, Han Fei finally saw hope. It was said that human beings were pregnant for 10 months. In fact, it was the same for other people. But the Pioneer Sea realm might not be so simple. A year's time seemed to have just laid the foundation, and a sesame seed had appeared. Xia Xiaochan was overjoyed and was about to say that the God spirit blood was no longer consumed. However, she saw that Han Fei was already stunned, standing like a fool. He murmured, Origin, the origin of life. What are you doing? What are you eating for breakfast today? Huh. Suddenly, Xia Xiaochan realized that something was wrong. When she looked at Han Fei's eyes, her face couldn't help but change slightly. Han Fei had an epiphany. Han Fei had been hiding from the world for more than 200 years for two things. One was to strengthen his Taoist heart. Now, he had already seen through this path. The other was to wait for an opportunity to open the sky. In fact, when Han Fei knew where his Taoist heart was, he could already open the sky. But he, who had been reading the emperor's letters all year round, had been thinking about the way of returning to the origin that the emperor mentioned. For example, Han Xian cultivated all kinds of Taoism at the same time, which, in a sense, happened to fit the so-called way of returning to the origin. But Han Xian might have never thought so. And Han Fei, even though he had some guesses, he wasn't sure if Han Xian was right. However, when he saw the sesame-sized child in Xia Xiaochan's belly, he suddenly seemed to understand something. Why did the origin sea simulate the outside world? Since he knew about this, he had been piling up countless resources into the origin sea. It seemed that he had become very strong. However, if his Taoist heart was not strong enough, it could break his strength. Now, he understood the Taoist heart. However, he hadn't found the opportunity to open the sky. If it was just the way of opening the sky itself, he could have opened the sky long ago. But that opportunity, or the way to integrate the Tao and the origin sea in the emperor's letters, Han Fei had never found it. But at this moment he suddenly understood. The origin of life indicated a new life. The world was reshaped, and everything was in line with the origin of nature. It was the normal way of the world's rotation, which could carry all kinds of Taoism. This was the so-called way of returning to the origin. Crack! In Xia Xiaochan's surprised eyes, the seal that Han Fei set on himself suddenly shattered at this moment, without warning. Chapter 2095. Crack! At that moment, this sound resounded between heaven and earth. There were trillions of humans in the entire land of the human race. They all stopped or walked out of the door looking at the sky. 9 palace sky. Han Xian suddenly opened his eyes, which were like torches, penetrating through the void and landing on a small village under the lawless sky. Han Xian couldn't help grinning. Brat, you're finally willing to show up? The Snail King was tens of millions of kilometers away from the land of the human race. However, he felt that there was the power of the Great Way gathering towards the settlement of the outer domain. Immediately, the old snail realized that something was wrong. It was impossible for a cultivator in the Pioneer Sea realm to make such a big noise. Even when he split open the sky, the noise was much smaller than this. Is Han Fei going to split open the sky? In the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, Luo Xiaobai was cultivating. However, in the place where she was cultivating, a water droplet suspended on a bluestone jade platform suddenly began to vibrate. Hearing the sound in the sky and seeing the movement of the infinity water, Luo Xiaobai was immediately shocked. 100 years ago, Jiuyin Ling opened the sea. 100 years later, you're finally going to split open the sky? Swish, the infinity water turned into a long water blade and disappeared into the void. Luo Xiaobai also disappeared. At that moment, the Tao and tribulation clouds in the surrounding thousands of kilometers all gathered towards the Bright Moon Village. In the Bright Moon Village, countless people shouted, "Look, something happened to the old village leader's house. Go and help." Oh no, it's the old village leader's house. What did the old village leader do? Why is there such a big noise? There were middle-aged, young, and even old men, all running wildly. During the years when Han Fei was the village leader, he had helped countless people in the Bright Moon Village and never asked for anything in return. He only felt that it was what a village leader should do. Therefore, when everyone saw the yard where Han Fei's house was located, the spiritual energy was chaotic, and even a pillar of light appeared. They all rushed there. Some people even thought that Han Fei must have encountered some danger. Some carried sticks, some carried fishing rods, some held double knives, and some carried copper hammers. They all rushed to Han Fei's house in a formidable array. However, the more they charged, the more alarmed they became. It was as if something was wrong. In an instant, the spiritual energy in Bright Moon Village became 10 times, 100 times denser. Quite a few people had managed to make a breakthrough as soon as they stepped out of their houses and took in a mouthful of spiritual energy. They had no choice but to sit down cross-legged and focus on their breakthrough. However, there were still quite a number of people who rushed to Han Fei's house. However, these people were more than a kilometer away and could no longer go any further. The spirit chi here was simply too dense. It was so dense that even if they didn't take the initiative to absorb the spirit chi, there would still be a huge amount of spirit chi pouring into their bodies. The current village chief roared, "All of you, hold your breath and retreat. Retreat. Don't absorb too much spiritual energy, or your bodies will explode." Other than the village chief, many people were shouting, "Not good, retreat quickly, the spiritual energy is crazily pouring into my body. Everyone retreat quickly. This place is dangerous. The spiritual energy is exploding. There's too much of it. We can't absorb it all. If you want to live, then don't rush forward." The village chief, who had been in the middle of issuing orders, was now trembling. Suddenly, he realized just who exactly was this old village chief. If he was just a hidden fisher, even if he ascended to the sky, how could he burst out such a huge amount of spiritual energy? This was no longer spiritual energy, but spiritual pressure. Crack, the seal on Han Fei's body was fully opened, and invisible waves of air shook out. If this force was allowed to sweep in all directions, even if Han Fei did it unintentionally, no one in the Bright Moon Village could survive. Swish Xia Xiaochan had already come to the outside of the courtyard, standing in the air. She waved one hand, and an invisible barrier blocked a round of terrifying power impact. But even the shock waves formed by the energy and seals shook countless people back and even fell. Someone shouted, "Look, it's Granny Xia." An old man was surprised. Isn't that the old village chief's wife? Didn't they say that her lifespan had come to an end? Who the fuck said that? No, Granny Xia is just a hidden fisher. How can she stand in the air? Someone was shocked. She hid her strength. The old village chief and Granny Xia must have hidden their strength. Those who can stand in the air are at least law enforcers. Does a law enforcer have the ability to form an invisible barrier with a push of his hand and block such a huge impact? Swish, at this moment, two figures appeared quietly. Mira said eagerly, "Sister-in-law? Is it really you?" "My brother." Xia Xiaochan nodded. "I see." Xia Xiaochan's words were simple, but Yin-Er was shocked. She knew that her brother was only the same age as her. In just a few hundred years, he was about to step into the sky-opening realm? Below, the village chief was dumbfounded. He trembled and said, "Emperor Xian." "Greetings, Emperor Xian." After the unification of the human race, many of the kings in the human world had statues. Even those who didn't have statues had pictures of them. And Han Xian, the emperor of the human race, who didn't know him? Who wouldn't know? Who wouldn't know? Clanged the sticks, fishing rods, hammers, and sabers in the hands of the villagers who came here to save the day all fell to the ground. "Greetings, Emperor Xian." "Greetings, Emperor Xian." The black mass of people all knelt down. The villagers of the Bright Moon Village were stunned. How much of an honor was it to see Emperor Xian? However, Emperor Xian was obviously here for the old village chief. Who was the old village chief? How could he be so powerful? But then they saw the immortal master of the Wujin heaven, Li Yingtian, the master of the flying feather heaven, Xie Yu, and the storm dragon eagle king. Immediately afterward, the kings of the immortal palace in the outer domain of the human race arrived. There was even a huge phantom in the sky, spanning more than 800 kilometers. It was a huge snail. Who else could it be but the emperor of the giant beast clan? The villagers of the Bright Moon Village were all ordinary people. They had never seen this before. All the kings and emperors had come in person. All the kings and venerables had arrived. Swish, a drop of water broke through the void, and with a walla sound, it scattered into a sky full of saber shadows. The small courtyard around Han Fei began to spin. At this moment, the infinity water returned, and part of Han Fei's will was descending into his origin sea. The origin sea has never existed for the sake of imitation. It's the origin of all things. It's not about stuffing things into it. It's about nurturing and giving birth to all creatures. With a thought from Han Fei, the origin sea of more than 100,000 kilometers, the endless resources, and the vast energy collapsed. The ultra-quality spiritual stones, the heavenly fault star tree that he took from the Grand Purity Palace, the materials he saved, the remains of the sea expanding realm, the essence of the earth veins, everything collapsed with a thought from Han Fei. At this moment, the time chain was upgraded automatically. Han Fei didn't even blink when 100,000 strands of chaotic energy were consumed. The origin sea that Han Fei had spent countless efforts to build, which could be said to be the most luxurious in the history of the sea world, turned into a land of billowing smoke and dust at this moment. Han Fei shouted, "Mountains and rivers are rebuilt, everything returns to its origin, the sun and the moon rotate, the yin and the yang of the world." In this land of ruins, because the power was too chaotic, the earth veins were squeezing. Han Fei raised his eyes, and the sky-opening technique was right in front of him. When he saw the incantations all over the sky, he seemed to understand something. Outside, Han Fei suddenly opened his eyes. When he saw so many people watching, he didn't feel anything. She heard him shout, "Little girl." After living together for so many years, the two of them could easily read each other's minds. Xia Xiaochan's battle suit appeared, her face was restored, and her hair was black. She stepped on the void. As Xia Xiaochan stretched out her hand, the metamorphosis water appeared. Ling Tian's pupils constricted. Is she going to? And Han Fei's burly village leader appearance also changed at this moment, returning to his old appearance. He waved his hand, and the infinity water was held in his hand. Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan held hands and threw out the water drops in their hands at the same time. The infinity water and the chaotic original water intertwined like two dragons and soared into the sky. Han Fei shouted, "My name is Han Fei. I entered the heavenless sky by mistake and entered the time gap of the heavenly desolate city." Li Huang, the city lord, fought against the sea demons for more than 200 years. At that time, the heavenly desolate city was no more than 1,000 kilometers long and had a population of no more than 2 million. In the end, in the time gap, Li Huang led the 2 million people in the city to fight to the death. I promised him that one day, I would rebuild the heavenly desolate city and let the name of Li Huang return to the heavenly palace. Rise! Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan turned into giant void hands at the same time, grabbing two huge mountains that stretched for thousands of kilometers from the sea. As early as when Han Fei came to the heavenless sky, he had already started preparing. During the 100 years he lived here with Xia Xiaochan, their main task was to build this heavenly desolate city. Today, the city appeared. At that moment, countless experts from all directions witnessed the birth of a city with their own eyes, and their eyes were full of astonishment. At the same time, there was also admiration. As the two floating islands were connected, countless arrays were imprinted in the void in all directions. And a large number of black incantations on Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan turned into countless black smoke arrays, imprinting on the giant city. The onlookers were all shocked. Zhang Xuanyu couldn't speak for a long time. When he opened his mouth, he exclaimed, "We are both sea creators." Chapter 2096. Li Yingtian didn't expect that the heavenly desolate city would be established in this way. Han Fei had even prepared the floating island right under his nose. It could be seen how much of a failure he was as the master of the immortal palace. He was afraid that Li Huang's name would be on par with his in the future. Of course, while Li Yingtian was helpless, he was actually a little delighted. It seemed that Han Fei was going to split open the sky. Han Fei's influence in the human race was unprecedented. The floating island he built with his own hands would be a place that tens of thousands of people would scramble to live in. At least, he wouldn't have to worry about the basic population of the shadowless heaven in the future. As the master of the immortal palace, what he feared most was that there were only a few people in the land under his rule. The result of no one was that it was difficult to produce strong masters. If there were no strong masters in the immortal palace, How could it be called the Immortal Palace? Besides, if there were no people under his rule, who would provide him with the power of faith? Therefore, even the master of the Immortal Palace had a huge demand for people. When there were no more black runes appearing in Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan's bodies, they knew that Li Huang's curse had been lifted. No matter how strong Li Huang was, that was the curse he planted on them with the power of a city. It was not impossible for them to forcibly break these curses. However, they could break these curses by force, but they couldn't solve the karma of their promise to Li Huang. This must be a knot in their hearts. Therefore, at this moment, the heavenly desolate city was being rebuilt, and Han Fei could split open the sky smoothly. Xia Xiaochan had mixed feelings. She knew that Han Fei would comprehend the last opportunity to split open the sky sooner or later. She just didn't expect it to be so fast. It would take others tens of thousands of years or at least thousands of years to comprehend it, but Han Fei comprehended it in a mere 200 years. Even if time could be accelerated in his origin sea, he hadn't entered it many times over the years. Above the main city of the Feather Heaven, countless humans were looking forward to it. A small half of these people were former residents of the Shadowless Heaven, but they had been living in the Feather Heaven for a long time. However, in their hearts, they knew that the Shadowless Heaven was their root. The point was that Han Fei, the human king, suddenly reappeared. Even children as young as a few years old were surprised and shouted the human king's name. A youngster said, "Father, is Han Fei the name of the human king?" The middle-aged man nodded and said, "Of course. 200 years ago, the human king led the human king's army and attacked the 100 demon tribe. He killed the emperor and king. In a single day, he killed almost all the experts of the 100 demon tribe. That kind of achievement, TSK, in the past 100,000 years, it was unprecedented." A child shouted, "Has the king of heroes and men returned?" "Oh, the human king has returned and is once again at the peak of the human race." As everyone shouted in unison, they saw two huge floating islands breaking through the void. Boom, the mountains intersected, and multicolored light shone brightly. Spiritual energy surged from all directions. Han Fei glanced at Xia Xiaochan. "Girl." Seeing that Han Fei flashed to the main city of the Heavenly Desolation City, Xia Xiaochan knew that Han Fei was going to undergo a tribulation here. With the power of the tribulation, he could reshape the Heavenly Desolation City on a deeper level. It could be predicted that as long as the Heavenly Desolation City could survive this heavenly tribulation, there would at least be some experts born in the city in the future. At this moment, Han Fei's heavenly tribulation had just gathered. Because the gathering range was very large, the speed of the heavenly tribulation wasn't very fast. Han Fei's voice, like a thunderclap, resounded in the entire human world. "My name is Han Fei. I've been cultivating for more than 300 years. I've killed countless enemies, dozens of kings, and 3 emperors. I call myself a king. Today, I'm the human emperor. Rumble." When Han Fei said, "I'm the human emperor," thunder rumbled in the sky, as if showing a very disapproving attitude toward this statement. Han Fei snorted and continued, "I'm the human emperor, and I'll create a new world for the human race." Boom, the sky exploded. This time, the mysterious power of heaven and earth descended, as if to suppress Han Fei. However, Han Fei's momentum was also constantly rising. The mighty power from all directions was pouring into Han Fei's body. At the same time, Han Fei's words made countless people's hearts explode and their blood boil. Although he hadn't appeared for 200 years, once he reappeared, countless people couldn't help but admire and worship him. After all, Han Fei's story had been spread throughout the entire Outer Sea. He was the only hero since the Outer Sea established the human world. Because of Han Fei, the current situation of the human world was established. Therefore, when Han Fei said he would create a new world for the human race, no matter how sudden it was, countless people were convinced and full of expectations. At this moment, the heavenly Tao rumbled, the kings were shocked, and all the venerable realm experts were moved. They were already convinced by someone who could say this. Han Xian looked solemn and clenched his fists. "The path this brat is going to take is a bit ruthless." The happiest one was actually Emperor Snail, who thought that Han Fei still had the giant beast incarnation in the giant beast clan. The stronger the human race, the stronger Han Fei himself, and the stronger the human race, the easier the future of the giant beast clan would be. After all, the giant beast clan had always been the target of others. Without the Mist Sea, the giant beast clan would probably have to compete with the 100 demons, the underwater human race, and even the human race. Otherwise, they would become materials in the hands of others. Han Fei stepped in the air and pointed to the sky. As the human emperor, I should settle down for the human race. As the human emperor, I should preach and enlighten all living beings. As the human emperor, I will cross the sea east and return to all races. As the human emperor, if the heavens stop me, I will create a new world. Rumble. It seemed that even the heavenly Tao here couldn't stand it anymore. The heavenly tribulation hadn't finished gathering yet, but a heavenly tribulation struck down with a boom. It was very similar to Jiuyin Ling's heavenly tribulation. It was purple at the beginning. When a bolt of lightning struck down heavily, Han Fei opened his arms and let the heavenly tribulation baptize him. Han Fei's flesh and blood were like dry earth that needed to be moistened by rain. Han Fei grinned and looked straight at the vast heavenly tribulation. The Tao of the human emperor was not a Tao, but a Tao heart. Just as Jiuyin Ling said, he had set foot on this Tao from the very beginning, and today he had gone further and further on this Tao. Since he had already embarked on this path, why should he be afraid to bear this pressure? Therefore, his Tao heart was enough to open the sky today. As for the opportunity to open the sky, it was naturally to comprehend the true meaning of returning to essence. When the first bolt of lightning struck, Han Fei's bones began to shine. His golden jade bones had actually reached 99% as early as more than 50 years ago. However, for some reason, there was still the last bit left. No matter how hard his power of will surged, he couldn't break through. But at this moment, there were finally signs of loosening. Since the first heavenly tribulation had arrived, the next lightning would naturally condense faster. However, this time, Han Fei had no resources to use. Because all his resources had been shattered and turned into the origin of the origin sea, they had returned to the origin and could not be used. Therefore, Han Fei could only resist these 9 heavenly tribulations. Rumble. The purple lightning struck, and the lightning on Han Fei's body twisted and crackled. Only those who had gone through the heaven-opening tribulation knew that every heavenly tribulation in the heaven-opening realm was a transformation. Han Fei's flesh, skin, bones, senses, and soul were all strengthening rapidly. Part of the power of the heavenly tribulation was absorbed into Han Fei's origin sea, trying to continue to expand it. However, the power of the heavenly tribulation didn't seem to have much effect on the expansion of the origin sea. Fortunately, Han Fei let the heavenly tribulation temper his body. The third. The fourth. When the 5th heavenly tribulation came, Han Fei suddenly felt that his golden jade bones had finally broken through the last barrier and reached phenomenal success. It seemed that the heavenly tribulation also realized that something was wrong with Han Fei. When the 6th lightning appeared, Han Fei felt a large amount of immortal spiritual energy, but it was not as gentle as the immortal spiritual energy he refined. This immortal spiritual energy was very violent. In addition, Han Fei saw a purple mist sprinkling down from the sky. Primordial purple chi? Han Fei took a deep breath. Only in the heaven-opening realm would this primordial purple chi appear for a short while. Therefore, Han Fei suddenly leaped into the primordial purple chi. Han Fei opened his mouth and a terrifying suction force burst out. The entire 6th heavenly tribulation was directly swallowed by Han Fei. A massive amount of primordial purple chi was also swallowed by Han Fei. Down below, Lu Renkuang exclaimed, "Really? He can still eat such a heavenly tribulation?" Zhang Xuanyu mumbled, "Amazing, amazing, too amazing." Han Xian was shocked. He didn't know how Han Guanchu and Jiang Linxian had such a son. The human race was really on the rise. Even the Snail King had never seen such a heavenly tribulation. He said, This kid's physique is probably comparable to mine, isn't it? What the Snail King said was actually very shocking. He was carrying a snail shell on his back. Didn't it mean that Han Fei's physique was comparable to his when he was carrying a snail shell? Chapter 2097. At first, Han Fei didn't know what the primordial purple chi meant. However, when the primordial purple chi entered his body, Han Fei immediately felt that his bloodline was trembling. There seemed to be a powerful force in his bloodline that wanted to break free. Then, his divine soul seemed to welcome a heart-piercing chill, and the strength of his divine soul kept increasing. However, the primordial purple chi he absorbed was limited. He could cultivate his bloodline and divine soul by himself, but the opening of the origin sea was a big problem. Therefore, Han Fei poured almost 90% of the primordial purple chi into the origin sea. Once he was in the origin sea, he had the right to control it. With a thought, the primordial purple chi surged towards the edge of the origin sea. Buzz, 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 a lot of darkness was illuminated. Because time was accelerated in the origin sea, Han Fei had enough time to see how the primordial purple chi opened up the origin sea. It seemed that the two forces were canceling each other out. The origin sea created by the sixth heavenly tribulation broke through more than 5,000 kilometers of the origin sea, making his origin sea about 107,000 kilometers. This shocked Han Fei. Bei Luochen and Shirpuang's origin sea both covered more than 200,000 kilometers. It seemed that it would be difficult for him to catch up with them with the primordial purple chi in one go. But it made sense. These people had spent tens of thousands of years to open up the origin sea, while he had only spent a few seconds. Han Fei had to admit that he was smaller than them. At this time, Han Fei's physique was already extremely strong, and his golden jade bone had reached the phenomenal success level in the heavenly tribulation. Therefore, Han Fei withstood the 6 consecutive heavenly tribulations and even took one of them. Of course, after eating this heavenly tribulation, even though Han Fei's internal organs were strong, he was scorched and a lot of impurities were flowing out of his body. These impurities were shining with golden light and had a strong fragrance. It was hard for ordinary people to understand. How could there be such pure impurities in the world? From the 6th heavenly tribulation onwards, it seemed that every heavenly tribulation was accompanied by a large amount of primordial purple chi, and there was more and more of it. However, in the origin sea, the darkness was receding, and another primordial purple chi descended, opening up a space of about 8,000 kilometers. The primordial purple chi created by the 8th heavenly tribulation helped Han Fei open up more than 12,000 kilometers of space. When the last heavenly tribulation came, Han Fei's body was overflowing with light. Han Fei already had a plan. Although the space opened up by the primordial purple gas was gradually expanding, even if the last bit of primordial purple gas was used to open up the origin sea, it would only be a little more than 140,000 kilometers at most, not 150,000 kilometers. Han Fei thought to himself, if that's the case, I might as well try to forcibly contain the last primordial purple chi. So, under the shocked gazes of Han Xian and the Emperor Snail, Han Fei swallowed the heavenly tribulation again. Crack, 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 with a crackling sound, dense cracks appeared on the surface of Han Fei's body. Han Fei forcibly locked the power of the heavenly tribulation and the primordial energy, trying to merge them into his body. When even his eyes were emitting purple light, Han Fei felt that his body couldn't take it anymore, so he absorbed part of the primordial purple chi into his origin sea. Thousands of kilometers of tribulation clouds turned into 9 heavenly tribulations, locking Han Fei in them, but there was nothing he could do. At this moment, the tribulation clouds dissipated, and a holy pillar of light descended from the sky. This was the heavenly awakening divine technique. The cracks all over Han Fei's body were being repaired rapidly. Clatter, crack, crack, Han Fei twisted his body slightly, and like setting off firecrackers, his bones made crisp sounds like metal colliding. At that moment, when Han Fei opened his eyes, he saw that in addition to spiritual energy, there were also wisps of gray mist particles, which was the chaotic chi. With a slight movement of his perception, The immortal palaces and billions of humans in the outer sea all appeared in his perception. He could hear countless voices at the same time. Someone shouted, "Look, the heavenly tribulation is gone. Has the human king passed the heavenly tribulation successfully? It should be, right? This is too terrifying. I don't even know where the human king passed the heavenly tribulation. Why are the tribulation clouds here? But he's the human king now. How can a mere heavenly tribulation do anything to him?" Han Fei could see the faces of countless people with a single thought, and their words drilled into his mind like streams. Han Fei saw some familiar faces, such as Wang Dashui, who protected the academy, who was cultivating in various places, Zhou Ling, who was on the sea more than 300,000 kilometers away, and Little Fish, who was sitting on a big tree, holding his chin and watching the heavenly tribulation carefully. This was the basic operation of an expert with 5 senses and 6 senses. When Han Fei looked at the kings again, he felt that he could vaguely feel the power flowing in their bodies. He could tell their strength almost at a glance. Han Fei also sensed the hidden power of Han Xian and the Emperor of Snails, which was very powerful. However, for himself, he had a feeling that he could fight them and wouldn't lose at all. When Han Fei glanced at some venerables, for some reason, his eyes were purple. Although he couldn't see through their Tao, he could vaguely feel it. At this moment, Han Fei's heavenly tribulation wasn't completely over. It had just ended. He just glanced at the world in the blink of an eye. In fact, in his origin sea, the sky was cracking. Han Fei felt that the great Tao of Yin and Yang were growing and melting into the origin sea. After the sky opened, Han Fei saw a starry sky. He was actually very shocked. The crack in the sky seemed to be grafted with an endless galaxy. He didn't know whether it was connected to reality or something else. Besides, Han Fei saw that in the endless galaxy, there seemed to be 2 abnormally shining big stars, which seemed to be different from everything else. There seemed to be a consciousness looking at him. The old turtle said, "That's the star sea. The sky of the heaven-opening state is connected to the star sea. And the star sea can be understood as the starry universe you see in the outside world. However, it is not connected to the one above your head, but to an unknown star sea. The star sea and the soul sea actually have the same effect. In reality, if there are many heaven-opening state cultivators who are very close to each other, their consciousness can enter the star sea and feel each other. You can even try to enter the star sea and directly enter someone else's origin sea through the star sea to cut off their Tao. However, no matter how close the 2 star seas are, they can't be reached in a short time. The most important thing is that there may be star behemoths in the star sea. They are powerful creatures that can devour your consciousness and origin sea. The old turtle had never told him this before. However, if he had told him before, Han Fei probably wouldn't have understood it. But now, he had opened the sky and could directly observe the star sea. Therefore, it was easy to understand when he explained it. Of course, Han Fei wouldn't easily touch the star sea now. After all, he hadn't officially finished the process of opening the sky. In Han Fei's origin sea, the endless resources that had long collapsed and were in a chaotic state began to precipitate at this moment. Some clear air floated in the sky, and some turbid air sank to the ground. The earth veins were compressed, forming mountains and rivers. The spiritual spring was divided, part of which turned into wind and thunder, and part of which condensed into earth springs. Such a scene was out of Han Fei's control, and spontaneously appeared the scene of everything returning to the origin. When all this settled down, Han Fei's origin sea no longer needed to be arranged by himself, but the natural landform and ecology. However, perhaps all of his resources had become the foundation of the origin sea. When the primal chaos became clear, the landscape would still be barren and desolate. Compared to his origin sea, which looked like a fairyland, it was worlds apart in terms of appearance. However, even this barren land was slowly generating the aura of the Great Way. It was continuous generation. Han Fei had a feeling that when the aura of the Great Way was generated enough, there would be a qualitative change, which would help him better deduce this way and go deeper into the Great Way. What was even more amazing was that in the state of everything returning to the origin. His green jade stone bridge seemed to have some kind of connection with the origin sea, and it seemed that all the great ways that he had mastered were slowly generating the aura of the great way. Wow! At this moment, Han Fei knew that the sky-splitting technique had been completed. Next, it was time to explore and continue to develop the sky-splitting technique. Han Fei couldn't help but look at his information. Owner Han Fei, level greater than 100, sky-splitting technique. C 10,000 Family Treat 360201 Immortal Spiritual Energy 40 Origin C greater than 130,000 kilometers Spiritual Power 1922569 Perception Range 2 million kilometers Power 1126842 Waves First Spiritual Heritage Primordial Vein Second Spiritual Heritage Vein of Eternal Darkness First Spiritual Beast Twin Yin-Yang Spirit Swallowing Fish Level 92. Second Spiritual Beast Emperor Sparrow, Level 98. Main Arts Time. Fishing, Level 8 of Void Fishing, Emperor Level, Divine Quality. When Han Fei saw this information, even though he had slaughtered several strong enemies, he couldn't help but feel scared. At the beginning of the sky-splitting technique, his power had reached 12 million waves, which had doubled. Although his spiritual power hadn't doubled, it had increased by nearly 700,000 points. Besides, the higher the level of his soul, the stronger it was. Han Fei had expected that the chaotic energy would be replaced by the immortal spiritual energy. The existence of the chaotic energy seemed to be just for the origin sea. It was more like a transition of energy. His bloodline had increased by about 300,000 ranks. This should be the leap of life level after the sky-splitting technique. Han Fei couldn't help but look at the bloodline devouring. What he saw shocked him. C 10,000 Family Treat 296202223 Onert 360201 Nearby Bloodlines Time Dragon Carp Twin Yin-Yang Spirit Swallowing Fish Emperor Sparrow Recommended Bloodlines Hexagon Starfish Time Dragon Carp Golden Crow Divine Blood Good Heavens! There were 3 bloodlines that could be devoured at once. But Han Fei was only excited for a moment, and then he was relieved. These 3 bloodlines appeared together. It could be seen that they were relatively close. It was very likely that if he devoured one, he wouldn't be able to devour the other 2. As for why the bloodline of the Time Dragon Carp was still there, wasn't it easy for him to get some essence blood when little time was around? However, he still needed to think about which bloodline to devour. Chapter 2098. In Bright Moon Village, almost all of the villagers were prostrating on the ground. Old Village Chief? Human King? Oh no, Human Sovereign? This was the biggest joke in the history of the human race. Han Fei actually came to a small place like theirs to be the village chief? And lived here for more than 100 years? Who would have thought of this? Everyone was both shocked and overjoyed. Many people whispered to the people beside them, "You may not believe it, but the old village chief and Baba, I played fish dragon cards with Human Emperor, can you believe it?" Someone replied, "The Human Emperor personally taught my son. How is he compared to you?" Someone said, "I've gone to the imperial family's vegetable fields to pull vegetables. Let me ask you, who else?" Someone sighed. "I've introduced dozens of people to the Human Emperor, but he rejected all of them. I'm really a pig brain. How can it be my turn to introduce people to the Human Emperor?" For a moment, countless people looked at that person as if they were looking at an idiot. They thought to themselves, "You're really brave. Aren't you afraid that the person in the royal family will slap you to death?" Someone couldn't help but ask, "If the old village chief is a Human Emperor, then what about Granny Xia?" Gulp. Someone took a deep breath and said, "According to the legends, the wife of the Human Emperor is the princess of the Merfolk royal family." Many girls were scared. In the past, when Han Fei married a wife, many girls gave Xia Shaochan a cold shoulder. Now that they thought about it, how lucky they were to still be alive. As long as someone glared at him, he would probably be dead, right? Han Fei was not in a hurry to choose bloodlines. Many people were still waiting. Han Fei opened his eyes slightly, and with a blast of air, his battle suit shone and his long hair fluttered. Immediately, all the kings cheered. Congratulations to the human emperor for opening the sky. Congratulations to the human emperor for opening the sky. Han Xian's voice traveled into the world, his voice like thunder. Congratulations to the human sovereign for opening the sky. Han Xian's shout caused the entire world to seethe with excitement. Roar, I already said that Lord's sovereign personage would definitely be able to split open the sky. Now, you should be addressing him as human sovereign personage instead. This is the true return of a king. This is the true emperor of the human race. Now, our human race actually has 2 heaven-opening experts. With our strength, let's see how the inner region will look down on us. Someone sneered, the inner region is already too busy to take care of itself. With a sword sovereign overseeing things, how would the Grand Pure One and Limitless dare to act rashly? Today, when the human sovereign opens the sky, we shall drink for 3 days. Great news, this is truly great news for the human race. Ever since the outer realms humans gathered together, heroes have emerged in large numbers. Now, the human emperor wants to preach to the world. How exaggerated is that? Someone lamented, if we could unify the inner region, that would be the foundation for the human race's prosperity. With the human king's ruthless methods, how could he let go of the Grand Pure One? Zhang Xuanyu and the others were about to rush over, but Luo Xiaobai shouted, don't move. Emperor Snail, he seems to be planning something. Up in the sky, Han Fei directly used the Dharma world. As soon as he used it, he became 330,000 zhang tall, turning into a giant that could prop up the heavens. Void descent. Buzz, 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 a golden giant could be seen standing proudly in the sky above all the major cities in the outer region of the human race. Han Fei roared, as the human emperor, I should preach to the world. Today, I'm going to preach. Luo Xiaobai and the others looked at each other. Han Fei was going to give another lecture? Unlike before, Han Fei was already a heaven-opening state powerhouse this time. Now that Han Fei was going to preach, no one knew what kind of grand event would happen. Han Fei's voice was thunderous. What I'm going to talk about is the Taoist heart. It wasn't the first time that Han Fei preached, so he was very familiar with it. When Han Fei spoke about the so-called Taoist heart, his words seemed to have become chaotic immortal music, which mortals couldn't understand at all. Some people were at a loss and looked at the sky. Some people fell into a daze as if they were having an epiphany. Someone's aura surged and seemed to be preparing for a breakthrough. Anyway, at this moment, trillions of humans were sitting cross-legged, dumbfounded. Even those who didn't understand at all tried to listen to what Han Fei was saying. As they listened, they didn't know anything. Even Luo Xiaobai and the others didn't understand anything, but for some reason, they felt that they had benefited a lot. Han Fei's voice was leisurely, shaking the world. The major cities, villages, and surrounding spiritual energy storms swept over. Some people had their own reserved resources and subconsciously used them. Some people didn't have reserved resources and relied on the gathering of spiritual energy between heaven and earth. Anyway, on this day, in the entire human race, at least hundreds of millions of people had made breakthroughs. Even if they didn't, their strength had greatly improved. Many people woke up from the chaos and exclaimed, I've become a hidden fisher. I've been stuck at this level for more than 8 years. Some people and countless children were ecstatic. I've become a fishing master. I've also become a fishing master. I've broken through 3 realms. I was only 7 years old. My son has broken through 2 realms in 1 day. He's really a genius. Some people directly enforced the law as soon as they woke up, feeling that they couldn't suppress it. Some people even directly comprehended and broke through to the venerable realm. According to incomplete statistics, on this day, the total number of people who reached the venerable realm in the major immortal palaces reached an astonishing 3,000. On average, more than 100 people reached the venerable realm in each immortal palace. At the moment these people completed their breakthroughs, their eyes were fanatical and their hearts were filled with excitement. This was the way of the human emperor. This was the way of the human emperor. This was the way of the human emperor. At this moment, Han Fei walked towards Han Xian and the others while feeling the crazy influx of power of hope. It was too much. In the past, when only the yin-yang heaven provided him with power of hope, Han Fei still needed to show off in every battle so that people could provide him with power of hope. Now, after a wave of preaching, he received 10 times or even 100 times more power of hope than the people of the yin-yang heaven could provide. This laid a good foundation for him from the very beginning. At this moment, Zhang Xuanyu rushed up and punched Han Fei on the shoulder. Good boy, after 200 years of silence, you've finally opened the sky. You've really shown off in front of the entire human race. Han Fei grinned. I'm not showing off. This is my path. Luo Xiaobai asked, the path of the human emperor? This isn't an easy path. We don't even know where the myriad races are. Lu Renkuang asked, Fei, how does it feel to open the sky? Han Fei chuckled. It's very strong. Even if I haven't stabilized it yet, I feel that I can cut through the sea expansion stage with a casual slash. Brother, congratulations. Han Yin was also proud. In the past 200 years, Yin was the only one who worried about Han Fei except for Luo Xiaobai and the others. Han Fei touched Yin's head. I'm lucky. How can Bei Luochen kill me? But for you, there's a faint power escaping. I'm afraid you're preparing for the tribulation, right? Han Fei knew that Yin's talent shouldn't be worse than his. From the nine-tailed immortal that Yin awakened, he knew that she was also an extremely powerful spiritual beast. Before he had a chance to chat with Yin, Hong Yu couldn't help but say, Congratulations on opening the sky, human emperor. Now the human race can finally attack the inner area. Han Fei glanced at Hong Yu, thinking that this guy was really smart, but considering that he had already turned over a new leaf, he didn't argue with him. Han Xian patted Han Fei on the shoulder. Good boy. Now the Han family has opened the sky twice. If your father and mother knew this, they would definitely be relieved. Han Fei thought to himself, old Han once said that if I don't open the sky, I can't get involved in their affairs. Now that I've opened the sky, I wonder if I can get involved in it? Han Fei looked at Xia Xiaochan, and with a thought, he came to her. Girl. Zhang Xuanyu nodded. Zhang Xuanyu, I knew it. Even if you don't look for us, you should look for Xia Xiaochan. It seems that you've been together for a long time, haven't you? Han Fei smiled and said, 100 years. Luo Xiaobai was slightly relieved. Jiuyin Ling's Dao was really amazing. She even wondered if Han Fei was in a relationship with Jiuyin Ling. Han Xian asked, Han Fei, when are we going to the inner area? It's imperative for the human race to be unified. Now there are many experts on our side. When you stabilize your cultivation, you can decide when to go. It's up to you. Han Fei smiled. For now, there's no hurry. Even Luo Xiaobai was stunned. In fact, many people had been waiting for this day. Since the day of Jiuyin Ling's tribulation, many people knew that Han Fei wasn't dead. Since Han Fei didn't die, they all thought that the day when Han Fei returned would be the day when the inner area was unified. However, they never expected that Han Fei would say there was no hurry at this moment. Seeing that everyone was puzzled, Han Fei said, It's not too late to go to the inner area after my son is born. Luo Xiaobai asked, What? Zhang Xuanyu said, Wow. Wait, haven't you been comprehending Dao for the past 100 years? Why did you have a child? Zhang Xuanyu couldn't help but glance at Xia Xiaochan's belly, and the latter glared back. What are you looking at? I'll gouge your eyes out if you keep looking. Zhang Xuanyu shivered. Compared with Xia Xiaochan, Yixian was much better. On the contrary, Han Xian's breath was unstable, and his mouth cracked. Really? A child of the Han family? The stronger you are, the lower the probability of having a child. You can actually conceive a child before the sky is opened. Good, very good. Very good. There's no hurry to attack the inner area. It doesn't matter if we wait another 100 years for He Dao Yuan. However, Xia Xiaochan said, no, He Dao Yuan will be a hidden danger after all. Hundreds of years ago, when I was in the mermaid royal family, I heard from my mother that He Dao Yuan was afraid of going to extremes. It's inevitable that he won't become the next Sherpa Huang. So, He Dao Yuan must be killed as soon as possible. After all, I've just been pregnant. Looking at the progress, I'm afraid it will take a long time for me to give birth to him. Han Fei's face immediately became serious. Can you wait 100 years? Xia Shaochan asked, what about your way of the human emperor? Just to wait for a child, He Dao Yuan? Since we've become mortal enemies, if you give him a chance now, once he learns that I'm pregnant, who knows if he will be crazy enough to kill me? Han Fei's heart trembled. That's true. In this case, kings, please prepare your forces. When I stabilize my cultivation and come out of seclusion, the human army will unify the inner area. Chapter 2099. Han Fei split open the sky with great momentum, and all the people prayed. After the sky was split open, countless people from the various great immortal palaces tried to immigrate to the lawless sky. Li Yingtian was the one who had a headache, so Han Fei didn't care about it. Han Fei's former residence in the Bright Moon Village couldn't be lived there anymore. This place was also called the Mortal Emperor's residence, and it was the place where the Mortal Emperor comprehended the Tao. Bright Moon Village was visited by cultivators every day because everyone felt that the place where Renhuang comprehended the way must have some residual way rhythm. If they were to comprehend the Tao here, wouldn't their future be bright? In just 7 or 8 days. There was actually someone who comprehended the Tao near the human emperor's residence and became a venerable in one go. This news spread very quickly, which further confirmed the saying that one could comprehend the Tao in the human emperor residence. For a time, the Bright Moon Village became a place of enlightenment for various experts. The village chief of Bright Moon Village trembled with fear every day. These were all big shots. However, no one dared to be disrespectful to the village chief because the village chief kept saying, I was promoted by the human emperor. I drank with the human emperor and played cards with him. We even became good friends. Other than the village chief, many of the villagers of Bright Moon Village had boasted about how they had gone to sea together, how they had fished together, and how they had cooked together. There were even children who claimed that the human emperor had personally taught them. In any case, once these words were spoken, the big shots who came to Bright Moon Village would not dare to be rude to the villagers. Of course, they couldn't stay in human emperor's residence either. This was an order given by the village chief. No matter how powerful one's background was, as long as one dared to stay in human emperor's residence and destroy things there, he would go find the human emperor to punish them. Needless to say, when the village chief said those harsh words, a large number of people were indeed intimidated. However, the village chief did not know that there were often people who secretly moved in. In any case, he did not know, and the village chief would not tell him. He didn't know if it was because of Han Fei's sermons, but in just a month, there were as many as 7 or 8 Tao seekers around the human emperor's residence. Even if Han Fei explained that it had nothing to do with the human emperor's residence, no one would believe him. There was an endless stream of people who came to comprehend the Tao. This led to a great change in Brightman's industry, and all kinds of famous inns were opened. There was an inn with a sign saying, Human Emperor's Residence. An inn pushed out a display shelf. The fish that the human emperor and I boasted about. There were even youths who set up stalls to collect fees. They relied on one sentence. The human emperor taught me the heart of Tao. There was even a woman who set up a small stall. Just by saying, I went on a blind date with the human emperor, caused the stall to explode in sales. While everyone was talking about the enlightenment in the Bright Moon Village, Han Fei was consolidating his cultivation in the Origin Sea. Splitting the heavens only opened up the sky of the Origin Source Sea. However, it was only opening up the sky. It wasn't actually stable. What Han Fei comprehended was the path of returning, which closely combined the Great Tao with the Origin Sea. After he opened up this piece of sky, he couldn't help but have many doubts. There was the sky, there was the earth, there was the rotation of yin and yang. He couldn't help but think, how did yin and yang rotate? The great Tao of yin and yang transformed into the sun and moon. When they intersected with yin and yang, there would definitely be fluctuations. After the sun and moon alternated, where did they fall? This was because he subconsciously felt that the sun rose in the east and set in the west. If this rule was to be followed, what would the final surface of the origin sea look like? Almost instinctively, Han Fei felt that the origin sea should be a sphere. And the rotation of yin and yang was also circular, which made sense. However, he had seen the origin seas of Huang Jinyuan, Bei Luochen, and Sherpa Huang. Their origin seas seemed to only expand infinitely. Even the old tortoise had never tried to form the origin sea in the form of a sphere. Besides, the old turtle said, if the origin sea becomes a sphere, won't its size be fixed? At that time, Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. The heaven-opening state was based on the size of the Strong's origin sea. Just as the old turtle said, if he took the initiative to shape the origin sea into the shape of a planet, wouldn't its size be fixed? However, when he expanded his origin sea after the all things returned to origin, he vaguely felt something. Everything returned to the origin sea, but if the origin sea hadn't been condensed, wouldn't the origin sea itself not conform to the concept of nature? Han Fei had been thinking about this problem for the past few days, but he always felt that something was wrong. So Han Fei took out his fishing hook and fished out the historical projection of the Beast King. As soon as he came out, he heard the Beast King yell, "Didn't I tell you not to fish people?" Han Fei hurriedly said, "Master, I have something to ask you. It will have a profound impact on how to open the path to heaven." Seeing that it was a serious matter, the Beast King didn't embarrass Han Fei and asked, "What's the problem?" Han Fei asked, "Master, does the origin sea expand infinitely?" "So that's what you're talking about." The Beast King said, "I've also thought about this problem of yours back then. And after countless years of exploration, I came to the conclusion that it is not." Han Fei's eyes lit up. "That's right. I knew that the origin sea couldn't expand infinitely. Otherwise, it would feel a little boring." The Beast King said, "Now that you have opened the sky, even if you refer to reality, you will know the truth of the sunrise and the moonset. Therefore, after opening the sky, people will speculate that the origin sea is spherical, just like the stars. However, everyone knows that the bigger the origin sea, the better, so this direction should be correct. Even I have worked hard to open the origin sea for a long time, almost exhausting all the resources of the emperor, before I chose to connect the origin sea in all directions and condense it into a sphere." Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Condensing a sphere can prove my Tao?" The Beast King sneered. "How can it be so easy? You already know that the origin sea is connected to the sea of stars, right? Once the origin sea becomes like a big star, you need a lot of resources to maintain its operation. This is also what you need to do when you are in the sea expansion realm and the heaven opening realm. The purpose of the sea expansion realm is to open the sky. In fact, it doesn't matter how many resources are injected into the origin sea. The purpose of the heaven opening realm is to turn the origin sea into a star, but the size of the star and the path after the star is turned into is the key. Just turning into a star was already very difficult. You needed too many resources. Even so, even if you turn into a star, it doesn't mean that you can prove your Tao. What you need to prove your Tao is how to bear the Tao of heaven and earth, how to transform your Tao into the heavenly Tao, and how to integrate with the heavenly Tao. Only when you understand this can you have a chance to prove your Tao." Many thoughts flashed through Han Fei's mind, and he couldn't help but say, "So, after opening the sky, most people in the heaven opening realm know the way to prove their Tao, but it's very difficult to implement." The Beast King nodded. "You can say that. The bigger the origin sea, the stronger it is. Besides, after turning into a star, there will indeed be an upper limit to one's strength. Therefore, most people are unwilling to turn into stars. Even if some people are willing, after they turn into stars, their strength will not be much higher than when they didn't turn into stars. And it is also very difficult to integrate the heavenly Tao and one's own Tao. It is not as simple as you think. Therefore, unless it is absolutely necessary, people are usually unwilling to turn into stars before they understand the heavenly Tao and their own Tao." Han Fei couldn't help but look at the Beast King. "Master, then why did you turn into a star?" The Beast King said, "I understood the heavenly Tao and my own Tao. After I proved my Tao, I became an emperor, so why didn't I turn into a star? Han Fei wondered. Since you have already understood it, why don't you expand the origin sea, make yourself stronger, and then turn into a star? The Beast King smiled and said, you know, the heaven-opening realm is the heaven-opening realm after all. The bigger the origin sea is, the more difficult it is to turn into a star. The resources needed are simply astronomical. Where can I get the resources? I'm guarding this place. How can I have time to look for resources? Han Fei's heart moved. It seemed to make sense. His origin sea was only 130,000 kilometers wide, but he had already consumed countless resources. He couldn't even imagine it. Even if he wanted to turn into a star now, the same resources would at least double or even more. And in the heaven-opening realm, for every 10,000 kilometers the origin sea expanded, the resources needed would almost double. It could be seen how difficult the heaven-opening realm's demand for resources was. According to the Beast King, it seemed that all the resources of that emperor had been used up. It was no wonder that when he had asked for resources from him, he had given him nothing but a sovereign's handbook. But no matter what, Han Fei got a clear answer from the Beast King, that on the way to the heaven-opening realm, he had to achieve one goal, and that was to turn into a star. No matter how complicated it was, he had to turn into a star first. And just as the Beast King said, most people were reluctant to turn into stars, and Han Fei was certainly not willing to do so now. Not to mention that he had no resources now. Even if he had resources, he would probably use them to expand the origin sea. He was only 130,000 kilometers away. How could he go to the heaven-opening realm so soon? He hadn't even seen the sea realm world. If he went to the heaven-opening realm now, even if he succeeded, he might become the weakest emperor in history. After solving this puzzle, Han Fei was immediately enlightened. The Beast King's figure had already become illusory. He said, "Boy, the chaotic sea is not big after all. I'll wait for you to leave this place as soon as possible. When you prove your Tao, you and I will join hands and we can also establish a force. The two of us, master and disciple, can also explore the sea realm." Han Fei grinned and said, "Master, wait for me for a few days. I will go to unify the human race and wait until my son is born. I also want to ask you to help me take care of my child." Bim, the Beast King slapped him, and Han Fei still fell to the ground, thinking that he couldn't stop it at all. The Beast King snorted coldly. "Take care of your child? I proved my Tao just to take care of your child? Han Fei." Chapter 2100. Han Fei now had some clues about the exploration of the origin sea of the heaven-opening realm, and he had a venerable emperor to ask. Don't underestimate this little clue. If it were others, they might have to guess and make a choice, which was a very difficult thing. The origin sea was now undergoing a spontaneous remodeling similar to the movement of the Earth's crust, which should take a relatively long process. But now that he had advanced in the time chain, which accelerated time by 128 times, this process would be greatly accelerated. 100 years was actually equivalent to 10,000 years of accumulation. Therefore, from the beginning of the heaven-opening realm, he was destined to be much faster than Bei Luochen and the others. After learning about the star conversion, the first thing Han Fei had to do was naturally to choose a bloodline to devour. If nothing went wrong, it would take him a long time to devour any bloodline. The main problem was which one to devour. As a mysterious god, the hexagon starfish's inheritance was mainly focused on defense. If he chose this bloodline, he might have room for improvement in the field of arrays. Moreover, with his physique, coupled with the hexagon starfish's talent in arrays, when the arrays were opened, his chances of survival were very high, even in the sea realm. Time dragon carps, as creatures that swam in the long river of time, naturally had unparalleled talents. What was certain was that if he devoured this bloodline, he should go further on the Great Way of Time. The Great Way of Time was the most difficult to comprehend. Even he couldn't swim in time and could only resist the erosion of time for a short time. Of course, now that he had opened the heaven-opening realm, he might be able to travel hundreds or even thousands of years in time. But further away, Han Fei wasn't sure. Since opening the heaven-opening realm, Han Fei's understanding of his lifespan was about 1,000,000 years. Because at this realm, if he didn't appear in the world, he could really live for such a long time. And some other creatures might have a longer lifespan. This was the difference between races. And the last bloodline was the Golden Crow divine blood. This bloodline was undoubtedly a very powerful bloodline. In fact, it might even be the strongest bloodline among the three. Because this was the essence blood of the Golden Crow, a divine beast. If he swallowed this bloodline, it might greatly improve his combat talent and so on. It could even elevate the level of his bloodline to a very high level. However, he was ranked at the same level as the hexagon starfish and the time dragon carp, which might also mean that even if it was the blood essence of a divine beast, this divine beast might not be that strong. After all, the arch sparrow had fought with the divine beasts in the past. In terms of rank, the divine beasts and the great desolate beasts should be of the same rank. Therefore, there was no need to be particularly surprised that a divine beast was not a divine beast. At the very least, he could confirm that the twin yin-yang spirit-swallowing fishes and the emperor sparrow's bloodlines were clearly superior to the golden crow divine blood. Han Fei thought about it again and finally decided on the time dragon carp bloodline. The reason why he chose the time dragon carp was mainly because of its control over time. I don't know what happened to old Han and my mother. I don't even know where they're trapped. He had tried to fish old Han not long ago, but old Han was like a wooden statue and didn't say anything. If he wanted to know what had happened, he would have to go back again and think of a way to ask his father about them. Now that he had made his choice, Han Fei didn't hesitate. Devour! After a while, 6,022 years of devouring time appeared in Han Fei's information. Han Fei was speechless. If he didn't accelerate time in the Origin Sea, it would take him more than 6,000 years to devour this bloodline. It could be seen that the higher the level, the more difficult it was to devour bloodlines. Anyway, it would take more than 47 years of normal time to complete the devouring, so Han Fei wasn't in a hurry. Having decided to devour the blood essence of the time dragon carp, the golden crow divine blood could only be given to the giant beast avatar. As for how the giant beast avatar would use it, it would depend on what kind of opportunities would appear in the future. As for the essence blood of the hexagon starfish, Han Fei could only give it up. Probably after he devoured the bloodline of the time dragon carp, the bloodline of the hexagon starfish wouldn't be prompted. In addition to the bloodline devouring, Han Fei had another thing to do, that was the fourth divine elixir. No matter how the Origin Sea changed, the demon purification pot was not affected. And the fourth divine elixir had long been on the verge of maturity. At the moment when the primordial purple chi was injected into the Origin Sea, this elixir finally matured. The fourth elixir could ride the fog and clouds, control the stars and the sea, and absorb the spiritual aura of the earth. Suppress a sea, open up a sky, I am the master of this world. This elixir seemed to be very suitable for the cultivation of the heaven-opening state. Perhaps only the heaven-opening state could devour this elixir. Of course, Han Fei didn't immediately pick this elixir, because he was now seriously short of resources. He didn't have any chaotic chi, nor did he have much immortal spiritual chi. He didn't have any fierce chi either. All of them had been returned to the Origin Sea. If he needed a lot of resources to devour this elixir, it would be troublesome. So, Han Fei quietly left for a few months. Under the guidance of the nautical panorama, he dug more than 20 small ultra-quality spiritual stone veins and harvested more than 800,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones. Then, on this day above the sea, Han Fei smashed the void with a single slash and created an endless void. The cultivation of the heaven-opening state mostly absorbed the chaotic chi from the endless void and refined it into immortal spiritual chi. The only difficulty was that the closing ability of the endless void was too strong. If it was accidentally closed, the possibility of opening it again from the inside was very small. However, for Han Fei, this was not a big problem. After using the Gemini Divine technique, his strength was also amazing. The black fog body entered the endless void and directly absorbed the chaotic chi with the demon purification pot. Yes, others might also need to absorb the chaotic chi themselves to open the endless void. At that speed, even for the heaven-opening state, every time they cut open the endless void, it would be good if they could harvest a few or dozens of strands of chaotic chi. As time went on, there would naturally be more and more. But Han Fei was different. The demon purification pot only had one way to absorb the chaotic chi and immortal spiritual chi. And Han Fei kept attacking outside, opening the endless void, not letting it close. On average, he had to attack once every 2 seconds. And cutting open the endless void also consumed a lot of energy. Even for the emperor, they needed to rest for a day before they could do it 10 times at a time. Han Fei was not an ordinary emperor. He was a body cultivator. He could cut open the endless void with brute force and could persist for more than 30 times before he was temporarily exhausted. Besides, this kind of exhaustion could be recovered after half a day of rest. In other words, every time Han Fei opened the endless void, he could last for more than 50 seconds. Such a long time was enough for the demon purification pot to absorb half of the emperor's origin chi. Of course, although there was a huge amount of chaotic chi in the endless void, the amount was not as concentrated as the emperor's origin chi, so Han Fei's harvest was about 2,500 to 3,000 strands at a time. If others were to find out about this number, they would probably be dumbfounded. No one could imagine that Han Fei could absorb 8,000 strands of chaotic energy in a day, which was so precious. How could ordinary people dare to think about this for a year? And Han Fei's plan was to absorb it for a year, because he was going to upgrade the time chain again and continue to accelerate the origin chi. It seemed that after opening the sky, he had too much room for improvement, so Han Fei's plan went very smoothly. More than 4 months later, the time chain was upgraded again. At this time, the time acceleration in his origin chi had reached a terrifying level of 256 times. However, to Han Fei's surprise, the time chain disappeared. This made Han Fei's heart sink. Was it because there were not enough little vines so the time chain couldn't continue to upgrade, so it disappeared? Han Fei thought it was very likely to be the reason. Therefore, he didn't care very much. After all, his origin chi now had 256 times the time acceleration, which was already a very terrifying number. Not thinking about this, a few days later, Han Fei used the chaotic chi to transform the immortal spiritual energy for the first time. But this transformation suddenly made him feel that something was wrong. When he was in the Pioneer Sea realm, 10 strands of chaotic chi could be transformed into 1 strand of immortal spiritual energy, but now, it took 100 strands of chaotic chi to transform 1 strand of immortal spiritual energy. When Han Fei shot out the current immortal spiritual chi, he was surprised to find that the power of this immortal spiritual chi seemed to be stronger. There was actually a Taoist aura in it, and it was not just 1 or 2 kinds of Taoist aura. It seemed to contain a trace of the power of the Great Way. Han Fei used a day to test it, and the fierce chi condensed by the mysterious yellow chi turned out to be the same as the immortal spiritual energy. As usual, he shot out the immortal spiritual energy. As a result, this sword strike collapsed the void of 6,000 kilometers, and the endless void was directly blasted out for about 5 seconds. Fuck, so strong? Han Fei was shocked. Could it be that the way he opened the sky was wrong? The way of returning to the origin was 10 times more difficult to condense the immortal spiritual energy than the ordinary heaven opening state. Chapter 2101. Old Yuan, after you open the sky, what's the ratio of the chaotic energy to the immortal spiritual energy? The old turtle was silent most of the time. Han Fei was too powerful now. The only meaning of his existence now was to know more and answer Han Fei's questions at any time. The old turtle knew that only by finding his original body could he be useful to Han Fei now. Therefore, when Han Fei asked the question, the old turtle immediately replied, 100 to 1. Although you could transform the chaotic energy into immortal spiritual energy before, that immortal spiritual energy didn't have the blessing of Taoist aura. Besides, you used to be in the sea expansion realm, but now you are in the sky-opening realm. The level of your power is different, so the level of the immortal spiritual energy you transform is naturally different. Han Fei frowned. I don't feel much. The old turtle said, before, you could only use the power of the heaven-opening realm when you burst out one strand of divine killing intent. But only when you burst out 100 strands of divine killing intent at the same time can it be regarded as a real terrifying blow of the heaven-opening realm. When you pretended to fight with Kong Shen, that blow was really powerful, but you didn't hit the target, so it might not be obvious. Now, when you slashed down with your sword, the void collapsed. Isn't it obvious? Han Fei thought to himself, so that's how it is. I thought it was 10 times more difficult for me to transform the chaotic energy with my way of returning. The old turtle said, but in my opinion, it's not that your transformation is more difficult than others. It's just that it's easier than others because the immortal spiritual energy you transform seems to be more complicated, and the level of your power seems to be much higher than others. Han Fei sighed slightly. It's a pity that I thought I could be 10 times more powerful than my enemies. After a slight sigh, Han Fei didn't take it seriously. After all, his growth was already fast enough. If his power of heaven opening was 10 times more powerful than his enemies, wouldn't he be invincible in the heaven-opening realm in minutes? 8 months later, Han Fei saved 500,000 strands of chaotic energy, 10,000 strands of immortal spiritual energy, and 3,000 strands of ferocious spiritual energy. Anyway, if it was a battle, Han Fei would be able to burst out 300 strands of divine killing intent. Because the infinite void was here, he could obtain resources at any time. Han Fei finally knew why there was so little chaotic energy and immortal spiritual energy in the origin sea of Bei Luochen and the others. They might not even have 50,000 strands of immortal spiritual energy in their bodies, and their chaos energy might only be maintained at around 200,000 strands. Of course, the speed at which he absorbed the chaotic aura was 100 times faster than them. But they were people who had lived for tens of thousands of years. How could they only have so little stock? It was obvious that their immortal chi was most likely going to be used to open up their origin sea. The 50,000 strands of immortal chi were only left for emergencies. Looking at it this way, if he cultivated for 3 to 5 years, the amount of power he could accumulate would be several times that of their normal reserves. After that, he could cultivate the chaos energy and immortal chi, which he could use to open up his origin sea. Of course, Han Fei didn't intend to spend so long. What he wanted to do this time was efficiency. As Xia Shaochan said, He Daoyuan was a hidden danger after all. If a powerful heaven-opening expert made a targeted attack, it would still be a very frightening thing. Han Fei came to the vine of the demon purification pot, reached out and touched it. The pill fell into Han Fei's palm. The 4th divine pellet was suitable for heaven creation realm cultivation. When Han Fei took the divine pellet without hesitation, his whole soul buzzed as if it was about to leave his body. He felt that his mind was wandering in the sky and even about to break through the sea of stars. Han Fei felt the clouds in the sky, the wind and thunder rumbling, the earth veins being squeezed, the spiritual spring-forming veins, and the river flowing. With a thought, Han Fei appeared in the outside world. Because the origin sea was his, he didn't know whether it was because of the 4th divine pellet or because of his control of the origin sea. When he appeared in the outside world, he felt the same situation or even worse. Han Fei felt that his soul had left his body and could feel the changes in this world. The tides were surging on the sea, there were schools of fish swimming under the sea, the sky was hazy with clouds and mist, and thunder was faintly heard. The direction in which the spiritual energy between heaven and earth flowed, and the direction in which the undersea currents flowed, seemed that everything was under his control. Han Fei could feel the vitality of nature, the power of nature, the mighty power between heaven and earth, and the flow of spiritual energy in the earth veins. Han Fei couldn't help but be shocked. Why was this similar to the fusion of the great path of heaven and his own path that the Beast King mentioned? Then Han Fei remembered what the Emperor said in the letter. There was a way to lead the great path of heaven into one's own path, or to cut one's own path into the great path of heaven and man. He was in this state now, although he was on the great path of returning. However, at this moment, Han Fei found that he could not only take the great path of returning, but also the great path of heaven and man. He only needed to cut off part of his own path and integrate it into the great path of heaven and man. Then he could use the great path of heaven and man to cover his true great path. At this moment, Han Fei was thrilled. He didn't know what the fourth divine pellet was capable of. Today, he realized that it was so terrifying that he could become a part of the great path of heaven. In the Origin Sea, massive resources were being consumed. Han Fei had to make a decision immediately. He needed to cut off, or rather, separate part of the power of the great path and turn it into the great path of heaven. A lot of thoughts flashed through Han Fei's mind. He immediately cut off the great path of time and the great path of Tianqi. These two great paths turned into the great path of heaven and man. They no longer belonged to the Jade Bridge but to the Origin Sea. In this way, the large amount of chaotic energy and immortal spiritual qi that Han Fei had just accumulated wrapped the two great paths and part of his soul and assimilated them into this world. This situation lasted for more than 2 hours. When Han Fei slowly opened his eyes, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. He didn't expect that after studying the great path of returning for 200 years, he was still on the path of merging the great path into the Origin Sea. Of course, his great path didn't merge with the earth of the Origin Sea. Everything here, including the wind, thunder, rain and lightning, the sun and the moon, was actually a part of the great path. In this way, Han Fei's 3 supreme great paths were all integrated into the Origin Sea. The great path of yin and yang turned into the sun and the moon, the yin and yang of the world. The great path of Tianqi turned into the vitality of the Origin Sea. At this moment, in the Origin Sea, countless sprouts appeared on the earth, which was brought by the vitality of the great path of Tianqi. The great path of time was integrated into the Origin Sea, giving the Origin Sea time in a real sense. Han Fei was sure that in the future, he would no longer need the Green Jade Bridge to switch great paths. He could use them with a single thought. These 3 supreme great paths completely hid the great path of origin in the Green Jade Bridge. Even if something happened one day, as long as his great path of origin was not destroyed, he would not die. This meant that no one in the heaven-opening state could kill him at all. Even a venerable emperor might not be able to discover his true great path. Han Fei suddenly got up. It was time to stabilize his cultivation this time. Although if he practiced the void sky observing technique and the void fire refining technique, his strength should be greatly improved and he would make rapid progress in the early stage of the heaven-opening state. However, the path of cultivation in the heaven-opening state was long. No matter how fast his cultivation speed was, he couldn't become fat in one go. After more than a year of cultivation, his strength had basically stabilized, and it was time for him to get down to business. Looking at his information again, except for the separation of the great paths, everything else was within his expectations. Owner Han Fei, level greater than 100, heaven opening. C 10,000 family tree greater than 360,201, evolving, 06022, immortal spiritual energy 4, 200 origin C greater than 130,000 kilometers, spiritual power 1681598, perception range 2 million kilometers, power 118996 waves, first spiritual heritage, primordial vein, second spiritual heritage, vein of eternal darkness, first spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 92, second spiritual beast, emperor sparrow, level 98, main art, time fishing, level 8 of void fishing, emperor level, divine quality. A lot of immortal spiritual energy was consumed when he swallowed the 4th divine pill, but the ferocious energy didn't change much, but because it wasn't his main art, it didn't show up. He should still have half of the chaotic qi left, which could be converted into more than 2,000 strands of immortal spiritual energy. Therefore, Han Fei wasn't in a hurry to open the infinite void and swallow the chaotic qi. The weakening of the power of the soul was because part of it had been integrated into the heavenly path and could only be recovered slowly. And the strengthening of the power should be caused by the integration of the heavenly path into the origin sea. After all, he hadn't cultivated before, so he could only understand it in this way. At this point, Han Fei's strength was stabilized. He couldn't wait to go back. He didn't know how old his son or daughter were now. Half an hour later, Han Fei couldn't wait to go to the Nine-Palace Heaven. Since Xia Xiaochan was pregnant, to be safe, she stayed in the Nine-Palace Heaven, guarded by Han Xian. As soon as Han Fei came back, Han Xian noticed it. He scanned him with his perception and couldn't help but be shocked. It's only been a year and 2 months. You've consolidated it? Han Fei shrugged. What else can I do? Han Xian was speechless. It seemed that his nephew was indeed more talented than him. It took him more than 50 years to completely consolidate his cultivation. After replying to Han Xian, Han Fei's face suddenly changed and he roared, "Hey! What qualifications do you have? You're pregnant. Why did you run to the trial field?" Chapter 2102. Xia Xiaochan was pulled back from the trial field by Han Fei in a daze. Han Fei said angrily, "Can't you take a break for a few years? The trial is such a dangerous thing. Is it something you can do? What if I hit you in the stomach?" Xia Xiaochan was speechless. I'm a Grand Sea expansion monarch. Can a mere trial injure me? Besides, have you ever seen a king who could kill his child with just a few jumps? Han Fei said, "Anyway, don't jump around. Aren't you going to cultivate reincarnation? With your current foundation, it will be very easy for you to cultivate reincarnation. When your incarnation becomes a king, it will be the time for your foundation to be repaired. At that time, you will be the real Son of God." Xia Xiaochan said, "I'm thinking about a question." Han Fei? Xia Xiaochan said, "If I cultivate reincarnation, will it still be me? What if my reincarnation doesn't want to return? After all, it took her a long time to become a king. Once she becomes a king, she will merge with me, and then she will be gone. Do you think she will agree?" Han Fei was shocked by this statement. It seemed to make sense. The relationship between Tang Gu and Tang Yen was very complicated. Tang Yen had already become a sea expansion realm lord. Then, when Tang Gu also became a sea conqueror, should he return? After Tang Gu returned, who would he be? Seeing that Han Fei was also thinking, Xia Xiaochan said, "As the main body, I can forcibly summon him back." However, it was clearly another person's memories, another person's personality, another person's emotions. I don't think this is the right way. Cultivating reincarnation can only help you survive. If you want to cultivate, you should recultivate. Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. Recultivate? You have already become a king. Xia Xiaochan said, "I have already become a king, so I know the power of a king. If I were to recultivate, my path would be smooth and unobstructed." At this time, the old turtle also said, "Although it takes time to recultivate, I don't think time is valuable. I can just take a nap. If I can recultivate, it will be better than cultivating reincarnation." Han Fei couldn't help but frown. What Xia Xiaochan said was not unreasonable. He said, "That's good. When this is over and your son is born, I'll cultivate with you again. It just so happens that I also need time to continue strengthening my heaven opening stage cultivation and prepare to go out." One day later, above the sky, Han Fei gave the order. "All kings, listen to my orders. Gather at the Nine-Palace Heaven with all the venerable ones within 3 days. The second expedition of the human race, the crusade against the grand pure infinity, is about to begin." Buzz, on this day, the world was shaken. Someone said excitedly, "The second expedition has begun. Does this mean that we'll have to move to the inner region in the future?" I heard that the density of spirit chi in the inner region is several times that of the outer region, and the resources are 10 times that of the outer region. That's a great place. Someone said, "It's hard to say now. The expedition hasn't even started and you already want to live in the inner region?" That person sneered, "Do you think you can run when the human sovereign is here? Were Bei Luochen of the limitless sky and Sherpa Huang of the 100 demon race killed by human kings? It's an open secret now." Everyone sighed. Anyway, this is a good thing. Human sovereign, Emperor Xian, the Emperor of One Sword, the Emperor of Snails, and the Sword God. Human sovereign has made friends all over the world. With such great strength, how can he lose? We just need to wait for human sovereign to return. Someone echoed, yes, it said that human sovereign is extremely efficient. Marching for a month, fighting for a while. I think the inner region is not far from us. While the people were discussing, the kings and the venerables quickly returned. When Han Fei opened the sky, the kings and the venerables were already ready. They thought it would take at least a decade or two for human sovereign to consolidate his strength. Who would have thought that he would come out of seclusion in just over a year? A venerable exclaimed, no wonder he is the human sovereign. He can split the sky when he is only at the sea expansion stage. Now that he has just opened the sky, I don't know whether his strength has been consolidated or not, but he's going to take down the grand pure infinity. He's really efficient. Someone echoed, in the last battle, in addition to 10 million ultra-quality spiritual stones, I also killed a venerable of the 100 demon race and gained a lot. No one blamed me. Someone sneered, who's going to pursue the trifling matter that you've obtained? The 100 demon race was destroyed, and the resources and wealth were 900 billion on the surface, but in fact, it was much more than that. So many venerables, who didn't get some benefits. When I cleaned up the battlefield, I saw 5 or 6 sun moon shells. A venerable who had just become a venerable joined in. Seniors, do you think I, who has just become a venerable, can get a share of the spoils? The two looked at each other and smiled. Yes, we can. In fact, we don't need to do anything. It's the human sovereign and the kings who really need to take action. Once there is a winner in the battle between the strong, the battle will be won. Our main task is to gather the immortal palace and preside over the situation after the victory. There will definitely be benefits. Han Fei didn't expect that only one day after he said he would gather in 3 days, the kings would arrive. Except for a few special cases such as in seclusion, all the venerables who could come were here. Last time, he just met the kings in a hurry and then went into seclusion. He didn't have time to meet them one by one. Now, Han Fei couldn't help but find that Jiao Ling was also here. It seemed that Jiao Ling was much more open-minded now. She said that she would see Han Fei again in the future, not now, but in the distant future. Therefore, Jiao Ling was very calm now, even when she saw Xia Shaochan standing next to Han Fei. Part of the reason why Xia Shaochan had to go to this battle was that Jiao Ling would also go. Of course, Jiao Ling was only a small factor for Xia Shaochan to go. If she went, the mermaid royal family would definitely send experts to watch the battle, and Xia Hongzhu might even watch the battle in person. With the mermaid royal family watching the battle, this battle would definitely be won. And the probability of the mermaid royal family participating was almost zero. Because from the moment Xia Hongzhu woke up, the enemy was no longer the human race in the chaotic ocean. The entire mermaid royal family had only one goal, the infamily in the sea realm. Besides, Xia Shaochan felt that she would definitely win this battle. Because Han Fei had the nautical multitude instrument, he Daoyuan couldn't not know. Since he knew, he wouldn't run. If he couldn't run, there was no reason for him to win, because the Grand Pure Infinity had too few heaven-opening realm experts. Once Han Fei joined forces with the Sword God Palace, the Chaos Heavens would also stand on Han Fei's side. Grand Pure Infinity had already secretly taken action. And after this battle, Han Fei and Xia Shaochan had to return to the mermaid royal family. After all, Xia Hongzhu should know something as important as Xia Xiaochan's pregnancy. Because Han Fei had the backing of the Beast King, he was very confident. No matter how powerful Xia Hongzhu was, she couldn't be more powerful than a venerable sovereign. Han Fei found that whether it was the Snow Girls, Liang Yin, or Huang Jie, their strength seemed to have improved a lot. These people had all come out of the imperial palace alive and had more or less obtained some opportunities. For example, the immortal palace lords like Xie Yu and Li Yingtian who returned later, because they were all at the immortal palace lord level, their strength wouldn't be too bad. At this moment, everyone looked at him without the hesitation and suspicion they had when they first met. Hong Yu shouted, We asked the human emperor to go on an expedition ahead of time and recover the inner region. It's our lifelong wish. Now, the army is full of momentum. It's time to march. As soon as Hong Yu shouted, all the venerables of the Berserk Corpse cult shouted, "The human emperor, go on an expedition, recover the inner region, and kill the traitors." With the Berserk Corpse cult taking the lead, the kings all cupped their fists. "The human emperor, go on an expedition." All the venerables shouted at the same time, "The human emperor, go on an expedition." Han Fei looked at Han Xian. "Uncle Xian, I'm afraid I have to leave you to guard the outer region this time." Han Xian asked, "Why don't you take me, a strong fighter, with you?" Han Fei said, "The snail emperor is slow, but he can't be faster than you. This time is different from last time. Last time, Sherpa Huang only sent 2 kings. But this time, if he Daoyuan doesn't respect martial ethics and attacks us as an emperor, the consequences are not something we can bear. Therefore, there must be someone guarding the rear." Han Xian nodded slightly. "Okay. With the Qianji Divine Ghost Disc, if he Daoyuan really comes, I'll kill him alone." Ha! The uncle and nephew looked at each other and smiled. Han Xian was telling the truth. Han Fei knew that Han Xian was telling the truth. Han Fei didn't think he Daoyuan could defeat the 5th form of the Qianji Divine Ghost Disc with the strength of an emperor. Even he could only unleash 6 times the strength of the Qianji Divine Ghost Disc. The 5th form of the Qianji Divine Ghost Disc could unleash 10 times the combat power. Once it was unleashed, the result could be imagined. Han Fei leaped up and stood on the 9 Palace Sky Tower. They heard him shout, "Good! Recover the inner region and unify the human race. It's the wish of all people. The human race should be unified and share the endless resources of the inner region. Kill the traitors, revive the human race, create a prosperous era, and create chaos in the sea. The human race should stand tall. Roar! This trip is to kill the traitors, revive the human race, and create a prosperous era. This trip is to kill the traitors, revive the human race, and create a prosperous era." Chapter 2103. News of the human clan's new expedition reached the inner region in a few days. The foreign fleet had just passed through the bewildering fog sea. Several large ships were already waiting here. Taking a closer look, he realized that they were all familiar faces. Zhao Xianglong and Lu Li came to pick him up in person. Zhao Xianglong couldn't help but sigh. It was said that Han Fei had already split open the sky. This child's cultivation talent was truly monstrous. Zhao Xianglong and Liu Li, "Greetings, human king." "Greetings, senior emperor snail." Even though they had never seen the snail emperor before, it wasn't hard for them to tell. When Han Fei saw Zhao Xianglong, he couldn't help but say, "Brother Zhao seems to be doing well recently." Zhao Xianglong smiled slightly. "Fortunately, I obtained a mind-cleansing mantra from Greater Darkness Heaven. Cultivating it every day, I should be able to fully recover after 1,000 years. However, I'm afraid splitting open the sky is impossible." Han Fei nodded slightly. Zhao Xianglong's obsession was so great that the entire dragon-subduing heaven had almost collapsed because of him. If he couldn't pass this trial, he wouldn't be able to split open the sky. Han Fei then looked at Lu Li and sighed, "I was also helpless when Qiu Yueming died in the Arch Palace." Lu Li cupped her hands. "Human Emperor, you don't have to blame yourself. The Arch Palace has a slim chance of survival, so how can the King Realm be an exception? Moreover, I heard that Ren Huang saved her several times. If she wants to blame something, she can only blame her bad luck." To make a long story short, what's the current situation in the inner region? Zhao Xianglong, "Let's go. We'll talk as we walk." After a while, the army continued to advance. According to Zhao Xianglong and Lu Li, the situation in the inner domain was far more delicate than he had imagined. It was said that he Daoyuan knew that a great disaster was about to befall him, so he took the risk out of desperation and entered the demonic path. Moreover, in order to forcefully seize part of the immortal palace in his hands, the Grand Pure One forcefully subdued the Golden Crow, Dream Weaving and Medicine King immortal palaces. After all, the unification and victory in the outer regions had allowed the major palaces in the inner regions to understand the situation. Bei Luochen was dead, and a real Wang Yijin had suddenly appeared in the Sword God Palace. He had even killed an emperor with a single sword strike. Apart from the Grand Pure One and the Chaos, who could match them? The Chaos Heavens had long sealed the skies. The Grand Pure Limitless and the 100 Demon race joined hands, but in the end, the 100 Demon race was annihilated. Now, there was no way to reverse the situation. If it wasn't for He Daoyuan's quick reflexes, forcefully taking in the Golden Crow Immortal Palace, Dream Immortal Palace, and Medicine King Immortal Palace, it was certain that they would betray them. Even Huobiuli of Golden Crow Heaven wouldn't want to be Han Fei's enemy under such circumstances. Instead, he would think about how to join Han Fei's side like Hongyu. Unfortunately, the conditions did not allow it. Apart from Heavenly Xianglong, not long after Zhao Xianglong returned, he had already secretly contacted the Sword God Four Palaces, allowing him to escape the Grand Pure Wuji's control. For example, before the Grand Pure One and the others were defeated, they would never have thought that they would lose. Lu Li said, "Now, the Tai Yuan Heaven Sealing technique has been used. Although the Sword God and Wang Yijin are strong, it's not so easy to kill a sovereign realm cultivator with one sword." The reason why Wang Yijin was able to kill a king with a single strike was because his sword had not been unsheathed for too long. Furthermore, Yun Tianhe was a hidden heaven opening expert. If Yun Tianhe and Xian Qingzi joined hands, they could barely fight against Wang Yijin. Even if these two were no match for Wang Yijin, perhaps Senior Sword God was already no match for He Daoyuan. So, we don't dare to act rashly. Hearing this, Han Fei was shocked. Senior Sword God was defeated by He Daoyuan? Did He Daoyuan become so powerful after becoming a demon? Zhao Xianglong said in a low voice, although I do not know the specifics of the situation. However, He Daoyuan's situation is most likely similar to my situation at the beginning of the Dragon Subduing Sky. They had activated something extremely dangerous. Although the Dragon Clan didn't descend like the Subduing Dragon Heaven, the Dragon Clan didn't descend. However, He Daoyuan himself must have used a similar method to communicate with some sort of existence, and entered the demonic path. Although his strength had not doubled, it had at least increased by 70 to 80%. If not for his fear of Wang Yijin, He Daoyuan might have dared to make a move. Han Fei narrowed his eyes. Did the Beast King know about this? However, if they were to communicate with the outside world through sacrificial rituals, the Beast King might not be aware of it. It was just like how the God's Bane Heaven had always been in contact with the Yin clan and practiced God's descent. If He Daoyuan's strength was doubled, he could not be underestimated. He was not an ordinary heaven-opening tier cultivator, but the former leader of the 36 mysterious heavens. His strength was even stronger than Bei Luochen. Han Fei asked, "Now the Dream-Weaving Heaven and the Medicine King Heaven can't contact each other at all?" Lu Li said, "Just like the Outer Realm, the Grand Pure Wuji and the 3 Great Divine Palaces have gathered together. There are hundreds of millions of humans there. If we fight now, I'm afraid the innocent will be implicated." Zhao Xianglong said, "If we force a fight, it is inevitable that He Daoyuan will do something outrageous. We can't ignore the lives of hundreds of millions of humans just to kill him." Han Fei nodded slightly. This was a bit tricky. If it was a fair fight, so what if He Daoyuan's strength doubled? You can double your strength, but I can't? If my strength doubled, can I break the shell of the Snail King? However, if He Daoyuan was using the lives of hundreds of millions of people to threaten me, should I fight or not? Han Fei was silent for a while and then said, "No matter what, let's see He Daoyuan's people first." 3 days later, Taishin Heaven, the Sword God, Wang Yijin, Han Fei, the Snail King, and Kong Shen all gathered here. The Sword God said, "Since you are walking on the great way of the human emperor, you must not give up the hundreds of millions of humans in the Grand Pure Wuji and the other 4 Great Divine Palaces. Otherwise, even if your path is not cut off, I'm afraid you can't go on." Han Fei nodded. I know what He Daoyuan wants. He just wants a chance to fight me one-on-one, to the death. Why do you think so? Even Wang Yijin couldn't help but ask this question. Han Fei smiled slightly. Even if he wants to use these hundreds of millions of humans to block my path, he will do it when he is face to face with me. Otherwise, if he slaughters them in advance, it will be beyond my reach. In fact, he can't block my great way of the human emperor. He Daoyuan understands this truth, so he will definitely meet with me. Maybe he is still hoping to kill me and get the nautical multitude instrument. The sword god asked, why doesn't he slaughter the great divine palaces and hundreds of millions of humans first to cut off your path to the human emperor? And then fight with you? Han Fei said, unless he doesn't want to live? If he doesn't want to live, why did he become a demon? Once hundreds of millions of humans die, how can he survive as long as we are here? Han Fei smiled. If he wants to fight me, then I'll satisfy him. The Snail King asked, fight you to the death? I'll take you to the territory he has set up. There were only 3 heaven-opening state cultivators left in the Grand Pure Wuji sect. If he Daoyuan wanted to fight Han Fei one-on-one, he would definitely find a place where other heaven-opening state cultivators couldn't intervene. Han Fei could only think that he Daoyuan had already prepared a place for the battle. Or he would follow Han Fei into the crevice of time. Of course, his purpose was to fight him one-on-one anyway. Han Fei couldn't help but sneer. When I was in the Pioneer Sea state, I wasn't afraid. After entering the heaven-opening state, my great way has been separated. No matter how strong he Daoyuan is, he can't kill me, unless this old man has already proved his Dao. However, if he had really proved his Dao, it would be so big that everyone in the chaotic vast sea would know. Even if no one here knew, the Beast King would definitely know. Therefore, Han Fei could fight this battle. Han Fei said, seniors, I don't know Xian Qingzi. I don't know Yun Tianhe, but he can't be stronger than Bei Luochen. If I take He Daoyuan away, the rest will be up to you. Wang Yijin said, Xian Qingzi, it's just a sword attack. The emperors were speechless. Only a great sword cultivator like him could say that. No one doubted it at all. The old snail said, if He Daoyuan is taken away, I can control the void and stop the 2 heaven-opening state cultivators. It won't be a problem. Although the old snail was slow, if he really fought with him, Han Fei wouldn't have a chance of winning. He had said that if it weren't for the chaotic vast sea, he would be at least as strong as the martial king and Xia Hongzhu if he went all out. Han Fei had always been decisive. He said, okay, I don't want any of the Grand Pure Wuji sect's Sea Expansion Realm cultivators. If we win this battle, the venerable state cultivators will be screened one by one. The human race will be unified now. Han Fei had made up his mind, and the others didn't object. They recognized Han Fei's strength. Besides, Han Fei had mastered the great Tao of time and the heavenly awakening divine technique, which was no weaker than the human king. The human king could compete with Xia Hongzhu when she was at her peak. Even if Han Fei couldn't defeat He Daoyuan who had just opened the sky, he wouldn't be killed. The heavenly awakening great Tao was known as the Tao of immortality. Half a day later, Han Fei ordered, everyone, attack the Grand Purity Palace. Latest chapter of the Fishing God, full text of the Fishing God, /read/106468/download address of the Fishing God, mobile phone of the Fishing God, /read/106468/ for the convenience of reading next time, you can click collect below to record this, chapter 2103, you can read it next time you open the bookshelf. If you like Fishing God, please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Thank you for your support. Chapter 2104. The Medicine King's Sky. Old Xiao stared at the medicine in the furnace with a solemn face. Not just the old lady, Sha Jiming and Hua Biuli didn't expect Han Fei to grow so fast. Splitting open the sky was such a difficult thing, but Han Fei did it just like that. Was he the god's favorite? Now they were forced by He Daoyuan to do it. However, no matter what the result of the battle between He Daoyuan and Han Fei was, they would all become sacrifices. At this moment, the old lady heaved a long sigh. It was better for one person to die than for the entire Medicine King's sky. When the last medicine was ready, the old lady spat out her blood essence into the furnace. This mouthful of lifeblood essence was equivalent to 10,000 years of the old woman's lifespan. Her hair turned white at a visible speed, and wrinkles appeared on her face. The old lady was one of the first to become a king. After such a long time, she spat out another 10,000 years of her life. Her life was almost at its limit. She didn't have many years left. At this moment, the pill tribulations gathered. A moment later, 8 pill tribulations came in a row, and a blood-red pill appeared in the sky. At this moment, He Daoyuan in a black robe appeared in the sky above the Medicine King's sky. He Daoyuan praised, as expected of Elder Chiu. 8th grade divine pills are hard to come by in a lifetime. With this pill, I'll have more confidence in this battle. Old Madame Chiu's breath was weak. She panted and said, if Han Fei didn't take away the exalted purple smoke furnace, this pill might have reached level 9. I can't fight. This is all I can do. I hope you can win. He Daoyuan grabbed the pill. Old Chiu, don't worry. We don't know who will be the winner until the end. After saying this, He Daoyuan left. He didn't care about the old lady's life or death, because the last value of the Medicine King's sky was gone. Outside the Grand Purity Palace, Han Fei's army had arrived. Han Fei's voice shook the palace. He Daoyuan, come out and die. His voice exploded in the Grand Purity Palace and the other palaces like thunder. Countless people here were all horrified. Someone said, Han Fei is really an ambitious man. How dare he call himself the human emperor? Bullshit human emperor. Is this how the human emperor does things? Someone sighed. Once the battle for splitting the heavens is effected, how can we survive? Someone let out a long sigh as if he had given up hope. In the eyes of the strong, we are just ants. Currently, our celestial palaces have been sealed for 100 years. People are only allowed to enter, but not leave. My emperor is not giving us a way out. Not a single one of them is good. There isn't a single good person among the strong. Someone cursed, including He Daoyuan and Han Fei. It wasn't the first time such voices had appeared. They had been heard since He Daoyuan forcibly sealed the 5 great celestial palaces. Some said that He Daoyuan was clearly trying to drag them down with him. Some people began to hesitate. Perhaps Han Fei's side was the correct path. He Daoyuan was going to threaten Han Fei with the billions of humans from the immortal palaces. When public opinion increased, the people would naturally come to a conclusion. Now Han Fei really came. In their opinion, Han Fei didn't take them seriously and didn't care about their safety at all. How could he be called the human emperor? In the Grand Purity Palace, He Daoyuan was sitting on the Celestial Palace. Xian Qingzi and Yun Tianhe stood on both sides, and He Daoyuan said indifferently, if something happens to me, you can't escape death either. So, if this happens, don't hold back. Burn all the 5 great celestial palaces. Even if you die, you must cut off Han Fei's path to the human emperor. Xian Qingzi smiled slightly. At this point we can only fight to the death. Yun Tianhe added, after you and I die, even if the flood surges to the sky, let's do it. At this moment, Han Fei stood alone 1,000,000 kilometers away from the Grand Purity Palace. Behind him, Xia Shaochan and the others were already powerless. In the face of such a battle, even the battle of kings was meaningless. Xia Shaochan said, Senior Sword God, Senior Emperor Snail, why did you let him take the risk alone? The Sword God responded, if not, He Daoyuan wouldn't have fought. Luo Xiaobai took Xia Shaochan's hand. You know him. You know how terrifying the phenomena he created were. This battle is the final decisive battle in the chaotic ocean. If Han Fei doesn't go, He Daoyuan and the others will still have to go if they threaten him with billions of humans, but then he will be in a passive position. At this time, you can only trust him. Zhang Xuanyu held the spear in his hand. He can bring us the most surprises. It took him 200 years to create the sky. He is also the only one in the entire chaotic ocean. It will be easy for him to kill He Daoyuan. Although Zhang Xuanyu said so, his palms were sweating. After all, He Daoyuan was the former leader of the human race. Such a strong master had created the sky for tens of thousands of years, and Han Fei had just created the sky. Lu Renkuang said in a low voice, "Don't worry. He ate the dumplings I made. This battle will be smooth." At this moment, with a swish, He Daoyuan appeared above the Grand Purity Palace in black with an arrogant attitude. "Han Fei, I didn't go to you, but you came to me first. Since you want to fight, do you dare to fight me fair and square?" Han Fei roared, "Why not? There should have been a decisive battle between you and me." He Daoyuan snorted coldly. "In that case, let's enter this place." He Daoyuan stretched out his hand and a prepared teleportation array appeared. On Han Fei's side, the kings were surprised that He Daoyuan wanted to fight Han Fei one-on-one. Suddenly, everyone's heart tightened. Under such circumstances, Han Fei shouldn't have fought in front of all the emperors. He Daoyuan said, "You are also a master of arrays. You should be able to understand this array." The hearts of Xia Shaochan and the others also sank. How could this be? Who knew what was on the other side of the teleportation array? However, when they were about to speak, they heard Han Fei sneer. "Since you want a fair battle, call Shuang Qingzi and Yun Tianhe out. How can it be fair without them? On my side, all the emperors are present, and I did not hide anything." He Daoyuan nodded slightly. "That's good. Then call Tai Yuan out too. Don't tell me he is not here." Last time, during the expedition to the 100 Demon Clan, Tai Yuan protected the rear of the human race. Maybe Tai Yuan wouldn't participate in their battles, but he wouldn't sit by and watch billions of human beings die. He Daoyuan knew that since he had the intention to destroy the 5 divine palaces, Tai Yuan must have guessed it, and he must be here. Han Fei didn't care. Tai Yuan had taken action once, and he couldn't hide it anymore. Han Fei said, "Senior Tai Yuan." Before seeing Tai Yuan himself, Tai Yuan's voice came from the void. He said, "I only want to protect the people and don't want to participate in your battles." He Daoyuan sneered. "As an emperor, you can't avoid some things even if you want to." After He Daoyuan said that, Shuang Qingzi and Yun Tianhe appeared in the distance. Han Fei glanced at the teleportation array and thought that with his current mastery of the great Tao of time, he could even reverse time at the last moment of the teleportation array. He believed that He Daoyuan must have a backup plan. However, didn't he have a backup plan? So, Han Fei looked back at the others. "Don't worry." At this moment, He Daoyuan said, "Since I'm giving you a chance to decide the winner, shouldn't you show some sincerity and show me the nautical globe? If you win, the inner area will be yours. If I win, the inner area will still be yours. I'll only protect Shuang Qingzi and Yun Tianhe. Otherwise, we'll fight to the death." Han Fei sneered. "The battle hasn't started yet, and you're already thinking about my nautical globe? If you want to see it, I'll show it to you." Then Han Fei stretched out his hand, and the nautical globe appeared. He Daoyuan narrowed his eyes slightly, and then a voice appeared in Han Fei's mind, "You should know that before we win, the sword god and the others can't do anything. Otherwise, you can kill Shuang Qingzi and Yun Tianhe, but your path will be cut off. Even if they are emperors, their Tao hearts will be obstructed." Han Fei responded, "It seems that you are really obsessed. You're threatening the billions of people in the 5 divine palaces. Do you think you deserve to lead the 36 mysterious heavens?" He Daoyuan scoffed. "Do you think you're any better?" "Humph," Han Fei snorted and glanced at the Queen of Snails and the others. "When I return, I'll take over the inner area." He Daoyuan and Han Fei entered the teleportation array one after another. The moment the two of them entered, the teleportation array collapsed, leaving no chance for the others to react. Xia Shaochan couldn't help looking into the void, clearly expressing that she wanted Xia Hongzhu and the others to pay attention. Because they didn't expect that Han Fei would choose to fight He Daoyuan one-on-one. In fact, when Han Fei and He Daoyuan entered the void, Luo Xiaobai and the others were surprised. The moment Han Fei and He Daoyuan left one after another, the sword god, Wang Yijian, Kong Shen, the Queen of Snails, and Tai Yuan all took action. Luo Xiaobai was dumbfounded. What's going on? Han Fei and He Daoyuan hadn't won yet. If they took action now, wouldn't they be forcing them to die together? Even Xian Qingzi and Yun Tianhe were stunned. Although they were prepared to destroy the 5 immortal palaces, it wasn't now. Han Fei and He Daoyuan had just left, and these emperors must know the unspoken rules of the battle. If they took action now, they would be forcing them to detonate the 5 immortal palaces right now. Xian Qingzi's face changed drastically. You dare to take action? Are you going to ignore the lives of billions of humans? Are you going to ignore your Taoist heart and Han Fei's path to the human emperor? Yun Tianhe and Xian Qingzi looked at each other and knew that these people didn't play by the rules. They made up their minds at the same time, and the 5 immortal palaces trembled as if a magnitude north earthquake had taken place at the same time. They seemed to be about to collapse in the next second. Also, the void around them showed signs of collapsing. Yun Tianhe cursed, "Since we're going to die, let's die together." However, at this moment, the 5 immortal palaces were sealed by a mysterious force at the same time, and the so-called perishing strategy collapsed in an instant. But God of Swords and the others were relieved. Kill! Chapter 2105. When Han Fei entered the teleportation array, he didn't find any danger. This was a super long-distance teleportation array. Although Han Fei didn't know the destination, he could turn back time in the teleportation array at any time, or even forcibly break the array and get out. After a while, what Han Fei worried about happened. The teleportation array had a problem. This was He Daoyuan's scheme, which was to make Han Fei jump into the trap he dug. But he didn't know that this was actually Han Fei's plan too. As long as He Daoyuan was lured away, he would never be able to return to the Grand Pure Wuji. This meant that the moment he stepped into the teleportation formation, this expedition had already been a success. Now, as Han Fei said, this was the final battle. Either he or He Daoyuan would die. Han Fei believed that he couldn't die, so He Daoyuan had to die. At this moment, the second half of the teleportation array was shrouded by a dead air. Han Fei had seen this kind of dead air before. It was on the Forbidden Island, similar to the Death Valley that led to the Undying Temple. Han Fei was shocked. If he really went to the Undying Temple, he really couldn't do anything to He Daoyuan. If the enemy was just He Daoyuan himself, it would be fine. But if the enemy was the Undying Temple, he would have to ask his first senior brother for help. Also, Han Fei never expected that He Daoyuan's trump card was the Undying Temple. It was said that the Undying Temple was everywhere. It turned out that their heritage couldn't be found in the chaotic ocean. When a blue halo flowed, Han Fei activated the Tao of Time as soon as he sensed the dead air. At the same time, as he slashed out, the infinite void was broken. The void storm instantly filled the entire teleportation array. The teleportation array collapsed. The two of them didn't dare to enter the infinite void, so they could only break the void storm at the same time, break the teleportation array, and fall out. However, there was another figure that fell out together with it. Han Fei couldn't help but wonder, is there a heaven-opening state cultivator? Han Fei frowned. Are they from the Immortal Temple? Fortunately, he reacted fast, otherwise he would have been killed immediately if he went to the end of the teleportation array. This was a sea area that nobody knew where it was. After the 3 of them fell out, Han Fei said, He Daoyuan, is this your backup plan? Do you think that one more heaven-opening stage undying can kill me? He Daoyuan sneered. You can try. Under Han Fei's feet, within 10,000 kilometers, the air of death was surging. He Daoyuan held the green sword in her hand. This sword was called the Sky-Opening 3-Feet Sword, but it was only an ultra-quality sea-quelling bizarre treasure. It was incomparable to Han Fei's treasure. What was terrifying was He Daoyuan's strength. Since this person was able to become the master of the Supreme Purity Palace and was once the strongest person in the human race, he naturally lived up to his name. He Daoyuan swung her sword, and Han Fei could feel the aura of the great Tao gathering around her sword. The moment He Daoyuan made his move, the Undying attacked as well. Of course, Han Fei immediately activated the Great Path and increased his combat power by 5 times. With the current Golden Jade Bone, he could completely control it. Swish, Han Fei waved the Tao Convergence sword with his left hand and the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique with his right hand. Ding, bang, the terrifying explosion caused the seawater within a radius of 10,000 kilometers to soar into the sky. Endless sword chi burst out in this place. It was just a tentative strike, and neither side was willing to show weakness. He Daoyuan didn't expect that Han Fei's current strength had reached such a terrifying level. He could fight two sky-opening immortals by himself, and he could still do it with ease? The power that Han Fei burst out had reached a terrifying 6 million waves. Of course, pure power couldn't measure a battle between the strong. However, in this strike, Han Fei found that the power of He Daoyuan's undying seemed to be more than 1. 5 million, less than 1. 8 million. After all, they weren't body cultivators, so this number was normal to Han Fei. Han Fei shouted, "He Daoyuan, don't you know that the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique is the nemesis of the Undying?" Nemesis? Humph, the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique consumes your lifespan, doesn't it? Even if you're a sky-opening immortal and have a lifespan of 1,000,000 years, you can still try to purify a heaven-opening immortal with the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique. At this time, He Daoyuan opened his mouth and swallowed, and a large amount of immortal chi was sucked into his body. His eyes were dark, and his body was full of death. He Daoyuan's strength was soaring rapidly. Han Fei was not in a hurry. Instead, he stopped and let He Daoyuan fight. He said lightly, "Since I entered the sky-opening realm, I haven't had a decent battle. Today, let's see how strong you can become." Oh, He Daoyuan's voice seemed to have become the roar of a beast, and half of his body turned into an octopus. Han Fei thought to himself, "This guy seems to be crazy." He even took this path with his spiritual beast. For a time, the sword shadows shot out by He Daoyuan's 8 tentacles surrounded the 3-feet sword of splitting, forming 9 sword shadows, and the Taoist aura was mixed with unknown death aura. Han Fei flipped his hand, and the immortal killing intent of the heaven-opening realm slashed out. Ping, ping, ping. Explosions rang out continuously, and the 8 sword shadows all collapsed. The baleful immortal even caused the void to collapse. However, the last sword formed a spiral and made a cracking sound as it rubbed against the remaining power of the immortal killing intent. Han Fei's face changed slightly. He Daoyuan's power was several times stronger than before. At this moment, the power of the explosion might be close to 3.8 million waves. When this sword was out, the area within 30,000 kilometers directly collapsed. Han Fei's immortal killing intent was wiped out. But Han Fei was not in a hurry. He formed a fist seal and broke the sword with force. While Han Fei and He Daoyuan were fighting, the immortal killing intent turned into a shadow 10,000 meters high, pointing at Han Fei like a ferocious demon. Immortal Divine Sword. At this moment He Daoyuan's power burst out. A sword aura burst out from his dark eyes, which carried the Taoist aura of death. Wherever it passed, the seawater and the void were corroded. This was a skill of Tao, which couldn't be resisted by strength alone. Han Fei waved his left hand, and time turned into a knife. The knife and the sword collided. Seeing that his time was about to be corroded, Han Fei added the power of the cycle of time to the blade of time. On the other side, Han Fei was covered in holy light, and he launched the sacrificing punch. The fist seal was filled with endless healing light. Rumbles, cough, cough, cough. Han Fei was forced back by the joint attack of the two. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Fortunately, Han Fei's explosive power was too strong. He shattered He Daoyuan's immortal killing intent with his left fist and shattered half of the demon shadow with his right fist. He Daoyuan said, "Time is not invincible. Take another attack from me." He Daoyuan and the immortal killing intent stretched out their hands. The air of death was connected, and endless darkness appeared in the void. It covered Han Fei. Han Fei thought of something. He held the blade of time in his left hand and the spatial giant in his right hand and slashed at the darkness, but he was sucked in when he touched it. Black hole? Black hole of death? Han Fei made up a name for this attack. It could absorb light and even time, which was similar to the infinite void. If Han Fei was covered by the power of death, he would have to sacrifice tens of thousands of years of his lifespan and activate the apocalyptic divine technique to block the attack again even if he didn't die. Also, Han Fei found a problem. He roared, "Is the immortal your external incarnation?" He Dao Yuan sneered. "Did you only find out now? What if I tell you that he's also the master of the immortal pirate crew, the top of the top 10 pirate groups?" Han Fei nodded while retreating. "That makes sense. The immortal pirate crew is the top of the top 10 pirate groups in the chaotic vast ocean. If it only had one king, it would have been destroyed a long time ago." However, Han Fei smiled and said, "What? Do you have other trump cards? Why don't I show you mine?" He Dao Yuan's face slightly changed. Han Fei's strength was terrifying, but he was sure that Han Fei had used a secret technique. Han Fei's only advantage was that he walked on the great path of time. His plan was to cut off time at the moment when Han Fei reversed time and entered the great path of time to return to his peak state. However, Han Fei was going to show his trump card now. Was there someone hiding in his origin sea? But the next moment, Han Fei flipped his hand and a mirror appeared. When the mirror shone, He Dao Yuan's undying avatar disappeared and reappeared in the mirror. The black hole of death that He Dao Yuan and the immortal's external incarnation immediately collapsed. Han Fei grinned. "Watch carefully, apocalyptic divine technique." Holy light descended from the sky and fell into the mirror. He Dao Yuan's external incarnation, who had just been sucked into the mirror of infinity, didn't have time to figure out how to break the mirror of infinity when he saw holy light bursting out from all the mirrors he could see. Han Fei sneered in his heart. When he entered the mirror of infinity, it took him a long time to find a way to leave. How did he get out in the blink of an eye? Even if he could destroy a low-quality divine weapon, it would basically kill his immortal clone. Besides, Han Fei didn't give him a chance at all. "Didn't you think I couldn't kill him with the apocalyptic divine technique?" In the mirror of infinity, an apocalyptic divine technique can be replicated by countless mirrors. I don't believe that he can persist as an immortal. As expected, when the mirror of infinity was filled with divine light, He Dao Yuan's immortal clone spewed out a lot of black mist, which was melted by the holy light as soon as it came out. In an instant, He Dao Yuan's immortal clone began to melt. Chapter 2106. He Dao Yuan was horrified. The undying clone was his biggest trump card. The two of them were connected, and the battle wouldn't be as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. In fact, although Han Fei was strong, with 2 heaven-opening stage cultivators, even if Han Fei's strength was unparalleled and his battle prowess was terrifying, he would not be able to easily resist. However, to his surprise, Han Fei just took out a mirror casually and stored his undying incarnation into it in the blink of an eye. Moreover, he could clearly feel the danger of the undying clone's death. He Dao Yuan wouldn't give up. He grabbed again, and the Shen Tian sword appeared. It seemed to have absorbed a lot of energy, and a scorching sword light burst out. He Dao Yuan even dripped a drop of green water from the sword. It merged with the sword light, and Han Fei clearly sensed the light. He felt a sense of danger. Han Fei was determined to destroy He Dao Yuan's undying clone, so he didn't retreat at all. He attacked with the divine aura and raised the phoenix feather manic blade. The celestial chi poured in crazily, and the sea started burning. Clang, bang, the divine aura collapsed after 3 seconds. Han Fei was shocked. The power of his immortal baleful chi was no longer what it used to be. What was that drop of green liquid? How could it make that Shen Tian sword so powerful? Even so, Han Fei didn't retreat. The moment he drew the phoenix feather manic blade, the sea seemed to become his domain. Clang, with another crisp sound, Han Fei was pushed back for 3,000 miles. Half of his body was numb. But he kept grinning. He Dao Yuan's attack wasn't weak, but he had too many divine weapons. If the ultimate blade hadn't exploded, this would be the best time to stab He Dao Yuan. But even without the ultimate blade, Han Fei still had the infinity water. At this moment, the infinity water also turned into a blade and slashed at He Dao Yuan. Pooh, Han Fei spat out some water, but he sucked it back in. He was actually stronger than He Daoyuan, if he didn't have that drop of strange liquid. But even so, he blocked He Daoyuan's attack. Han Fei couldn't help but laugh. He Daoyuan, is this your trump card? It's time for your undying avatar to fall. Explode! He Daoyuan was also well versed in battles. What he was fighting for was momentum and decisiveness. He was looking for an opportunity in the midst of an explosion. Han Fei didn't expect that he would detonate the Empyrean ancient sword. Damn it, the sword was right in front of him, and he suddenly detonated it. The explosion shook his internal organs and made his blood flow in reverse. Han Fei spat out a mouthful of blood again. The sword collapsed the void from the explosion, and the void storm swept over him. Fortunately, his flesh and blood were too tyrannical, and his golden jade bone had reached the large success stage. Although he felt a little exhausted, fortunately, the ancient suspended sky sword was not a divine artifact, and he could still resist it. Although there were hundreds of wounds on the surface of his body, they were all minor injuries. Han Fei realized that his outburst was coming to an end and he had to reverse time. However, in the Infinity Mirror, the apocalyptic divine art had yet to completely annihilate He Daoyuan's undying avatar. Therefore, taking advantage of this explosion, Han Fei launched the apocalyptic divine technique again to attack the Infinity Mirror. After all, he was an undying of the heaven opening stage, so it was indeed possible for him to block the attack of the Mirror of Infinity once. But the chance for him to block it a second time was very slim. Explode! He Daoyuan roared again. Han Fei thought that He Daoyuan was going to attack again, but with a crack, 3 cracks appeared on the Mirror of Infinity. Rumble! In the sky, a big blood-colored crack appeared, like a blood-colored abyss, and the sky was bleeding. This was the sign of the Emperor's death. Han Fei couldn't help but be shocked. You even blew up your heaven-opening stage avatar? Han Fei gasped. What a fucking ruthless person. Not only did he blow up an ultra-quality sea-quelling bizarre treasure that was almost comparable to a divine artifact, but now he even blew up his heaven-opening stage avatar. Even if it was an avatar, it was still a heaven-opening stage avatar. After all, the Infinity Mirror was only a low-quality divine artifact. It was already good that it didn't explode on the spot. The Grand Purity Palace was also in a fierce battle. The old snail forcibly protected the 5 immortal palaces, and Tai Yuan took down Huobuli, who tried to make trouble. Sha Jiming and Old Lady Qiu did not resist. At this time, there was no need for them to resist fearlessly, because it was meaningless. And the sword god, Wang Yijin, and Kong Shen attacked Shen Qingzi and Yun Tianhe. As soon as the Grand Purity Palace stood up, a blood-colored crack appeared in the sky, which was clearly the sign of the Emperor's death. Xia Shaochan immediately said, "It's not Han Fei." Phew. Suddenly, Luo Xiaobai and the others all breathed a sigh of relief. Zhang Xuanyu screamed, "Son of a bitch, is Han Fei's fighting efficiency so high now? How long has it been? He Daoyuan has been killed so quickly?" Lu Renquang said, "He killed an emperor when he was only in the sea opening stage. I don't think it's strange that he can kill an emperor so quickly." Even Wang Yijin couldn't help but be surprised. Was Han Fei's killing speed faster than his? His sword was still brewing, and Han Fei had already finished the battle? Luo Xiaobai shouted, "He Daoyuan has died. Grand Pure Wuji, all the immortal palaces, surrender now." When Luo Xiaobai and the others breathed a sigh of relief, they didn't know that Han Fei had only killed one of He Daoyuan's avatars. On the battlefield on Han Fei's side, with a thought from him, a time barrier appeared, and he took back the Infinity Mirror. He took a deep breath and directly entered the time barrier. No matter how strong Han Fei was in terms of basic combat power, he was still inferior to He Daoyuan. The gap of tens of thousands of years couldn't be made up so quickly. It was already very good that he could kill He Daoyuan's undying avatar and force him to blow up the Empyrean hanging sword in less than 10 minutes. However, when he turned back time, Han Fei saw He Daoyuan coming through time. He shouted, "This is the time I've been waiting for. This is the time when your strength is at its weakest. Let's see how you can take another sword strike from me." In the heaven-opening state, he could observe the river of time, and Han Fei didn't really step into the river of time. He just reversed time for a short time, so it was easier to detect. This time, He Daoyuan dripped 2 drops of green water in a row, and with the 3 feet opening sword as the carrier, he slashed into time, trying to kill Han Fei. In the blink of an eye, Han Fei was in the river of time and had to use the immortal killing intent again. Bam, bam. At this moment, the strange time technique broke out, but there were only 2 wisps of immortal killing intent. Just now, when his strength was at its peak, he was pushed back for 3,000 kilometers by the sword, and the immortal killing intent was broken in 3 minutes. This blow was obviously still not enough. However, Han Fei didn't panic. In the river of time, there was enough power of time. With the knife drawing technique, Han Fei pulled out a section of time and turned it into a knife, barely blocking the sword. Then he immediately reversed time at the moment when He Daoyuan attacked, but the 3 feet opening sword, which was dripped with 2 drops of green liquid, was only blocked for 1 minute, and then it continued to attack. Fortunately, Han Fei had broken through time at this time, and most of his body had drilled out of the river of time. Clang! Han Fei was hit by the 3 feet opening sword. The moment he jumped out of time, he began to cough up blood. However, fortunately, his reaction speed was fast enough. Once he walked out of time, he could return to his peak combat power. This time, unfortunately, because He Daoyuan's attack just now was too fast, he could only return to 10 minutes before. The 3 feet opening sword also came out with Han Fei. However, at this moment, Han Fei issued a telepathic thought, and a green wine gourd appeared in front of him. Clanged him, Han Fei was knocked back 10,000 kilometers by this weird Dao. Just now, when he was hit by the 3 feet opening sword, he felt that there was a weird power in his body, trying to absorb his power. He had to forcibly block it with his immortal spiritual qi, and at the same time, cast another heaven awakening divine technique. When the healing divine light fell on him, Han Fei felt that the power was purified. Han Fei had 10 minutes at this moment. He sneered. He Daoyuan, it seems that you have a lot of tricks. How many drops of green water do you have? As long as you have more than 100 drops, I will let you go today. If you don't, then prepare to die. He Daoyuan's heart also sank. The heaven awakening divine technique was as powerful as ever. How could he have so many of such treasures? When he opened the sky, he used 1 drop, and just used 3 drops. How could he block Han Fei with the last drop? The main reason was that Han Fei had a lot of divine weapons with him, which was too annoying. Law World. Invincible Eye. With only 10 minutes left, Han Fei had to go all out. At least, he couldn't give He Daoyuan another chance to sneak attack the Origin Sea. His strength doubled again, and because of the Law World, he was 30% stronger. At this moment, Han Fei felt that his strength had reached an unparalleled level. Above the sky, divine chains of order appeared inexplicably, trying to lock Han Fei. Shoot! What's going on? Anyway, Han Fei had no time to activate the immortal killing intent, so he could only point with 2 fingers and blast out a Dao unification sword strike, and then immediately withdraw the Law World. At the moment when the Law World disappeared, the divine chains of order in the sky hadn't disappeared, but they didn't continue to attack. Han Fei couldn't help but think of the old snail's words. Once he dared to use his full strength, the great Dao here would dare to split him. It turned out that it was true. He didn't want to be almost split by the great Dao here before he was killed by He Daoyuan. That would be a great loss. However, after all, he had already used the Dao unification sword strike. He Daoyuan could only fight. He shouted, Han Fei, if I die today, you won't be able to live either. Life Unity, Sword 1. At that moment, He Daoyuan took out an 8th grade divine pill and swallowed it. Then, the medicinal power was released in the blink of an eye. His body disintegrated, his spiritual beast disintegrated, and the 3-foot sword of splitting heaven collapsed, all of which merged into his great path. Ding! He Daoyuan's life-risking sword lasted for more than 10 breaths when it collided with the great Dao coalescent sword. Han Fei took advantage of this time to reverse time and return to the peak. In the instant that he reversed time, Another wave of celestial baleful immortal shot out. At the same time, the phoenix feather manic saber slashed out. The yin-yang reincarnation saber also slashed towards that sword. On the 13th breath, He Daiyuan's Dao sword formed from his own Dao and life force finally shattered the Dao convergent sword. In one breath, he had broken through the baleful immortal. In 2 breaths, he had broken the phoenix feather wild blade. In the 3rd second, as soon as Han Fei slashed out with the yin-yang reincarnation knife, the sword light began to twist by itself. Chiu Meng. He could only hear an extremely angry roar coming from the sword radiance. It should be someone who hated Chiu Meng to the core. Chiu Meng? Old Lady Chiu? It seemed that there was something wrong with the pill that He Daoyuan swallowed just now. The sword radiance was so weak that it was almost extinguished. But even so, this was the strike that He Daoyuan poured all his remaining lifespan into. Even if it was about to extinguish, it was still extremely powerful. Han Fei carried the huge green thunder wine gourd and frantically injected immortal spiritual energy into it. Han Fei roared, "Even if you try your best, it's just a sky-splitting heaven. You can't kill me." Bim, the mighty ripples crushed hundreds of thousands of kilometers, and this place was completely covered by the void storm. Rumble, in the sky, cracks of Dao burst out again. In the void storm, Han Fei was covered in blood, and no one knew where the gourd had flown to. Half of his body was cut open. Bah, don't you know what level you are? Tianchi. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.